pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have some agendas up here if anybody needs a copy. We'll lay on the table here. Michael, I took the liberty of getting started. I know you're on a tight schedule tonight. Yeah. First on the agenda this evening is a review of the approved town council's final wording of the ballot questions, approval of the amount of the override for the town, the schools, and a review of the special town meeting and annual town meeting warrant articles. What's the pleasure of the board on this? Would you like to have another meeting for the town meeting articles? We could do something on next week, March 3rd, or we could do it tonight. I mean, whatever.
My question is, we did this a number of times last year, so when would be the time that we would have all the articles finished so that we can review them? Because it seemed last time that we were reviewing these things 2 and 3 times. So I would like to take this for a special meeting and do it all the way through. But I want to do it at such time when we have probably everything but the FinCom recommendations. So that the language from town council, whatever information we're expecting from other parties, and I'm guessing that still may be too soon for next week.
Well, we have a deadline, March 10th.
March 10th.
So it might be too soon, but if it is, we will have to back from that March 10th. So March 3rd probably would be appropriate if you want to meet next.
Was March 10th coming to us?
The selectmen shall furnish to the finance committee no later than March 10th
Okay,
a complete warrant for the annual town meeting.
okay.
So that's what I was suggesting. I was having a separate meeting, and
Yeah, okay.
if it's the pleasure of the board, we could.
I'd go for a separate meeting this week, just concentrate on
I
that.
agree.
Okay, then, anybody
Next
have
Monday?
a problem with next Monday? Why don't we do that, Jack? We'll schedule
Okay.
next Monday for a meeting to deal with warrant articles for the annual town meeting and the special town meeting.
6 o'clock?
6 PM?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Then let's go back to the review of the approval for the final wording of the ballot questions. We have that in our packet. Question 1, shall the town of Westport be allowed to assess an additional $500,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding a capital stabilization fund for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2014? And that's a question to check off yes or no. Any questions on that one? We've pretty much gone through that one before. Hearing none, the second question was, shall the town of Westport be allowed to assess an additional, and then we had that blank, in real estate and property taxes for the purposes of funding the operating budgets for the town, and at the town side blank, and then the school side blank for the fiscal year 2000, July 1st, 2014. Now, open to discussion on the town side. The school side, the school voted at their last scheduled meeting for a figure on the school side of $557,939. So the school's requesting that that's the figure that we use for this override question. Now, the town side, we had Jack do some work. I sent an email when I was out of state here, just to make sure that we got it out to individual board members of looking at different options for the town side. The figure that we were working on, we had a detail of the town side for 2 people for the highway department, 2 people for the fire department. Stipends are restated for selectmen, assessors, board of health and registrars, a 120-hour clerk for the planning, the librarian substitutes and hours, and council on aging, $39,228, which consisted of the drivers and gasoline and custodian. Treasurer's office requesting 2.5 hours for 2 staff people. Collector, and then IT part-time, under 20 hours, no benefits. And then I think there was a question from a couple of board members on the benefits that might be applied to highway and fire. And Jack worked that out, sent it to us in form of correspondence, I think last week, a week ago Friday. That kind of broke down the cost of the benefit package. Benefit cost analysis is the title of the email that he sent out, and the data totals to the cost of, we had one person and 2 people, and it is included in the totals there. So the total with benefits for the town side, if you kept everybody in and all the requests that came in that we had approved, would have been $391,526. So if you want to discuss that, or if you want to go with that, go with that. The total then for question 2 would be an additional $949,465, and that would be broken down in the school side would be $557,939, and the town side would be $391,526. What's the pleasure of the board?
I personally still think the stipend should be in the budgets. I don't think we should be holding people hostage to go for the override. All the other things are extras with exception of that. So that's an issue I have with it.
So your suggestion would be, Steve, to put it in a budget?
I think it should have been in the budget, not put in this. It should have never been touched, like I said in the first place.
Okay, and where would the money come for the funding of it? Because one of our responsibilities
Yep.
would be identify a source of funds.
Yep, free cash, we have the cash.
So you take free cash for operation.
Yeah, like I stated, we had last year's, we had the amount that was split in half between the schools and the town side. And like I said from the beginning, instead of putting it all toward capital, we could have kept things status quo with the stipends and whatnot for the small amount that it is.
But that would really be going against the policy of the board to not use
Well-
one-time funds for reoccurring expenditures, but you certainly have an opportunity.
And like
to
I said,
consider.
we have last year's that we didn't touch, that we can touch now.
Right.
That would be within the policy, the 200,000 or whatever it was from last year.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments or recommendations?
Are we gonna wait for a special meeting to go over all of this and finalize it?
Not unless the pleasure of the board is to do so. I thought we were voting on this evening based on, we were waiting for the school.
This is the override. I mean, I do think that what Steve is proposing can come back up again next week because it's on the warrant for next week's article. And I think we should have a discussion about what constitutes free cash, because I think that we have been grossly underestimating receipts. And I believe that the FinCom has talked about putting caps on percentages of revenues that would come from local receipts, and not to go below those caps in terms of projecting revenues for the coming year.
I mean, there's nothing to stop the board, if they want, if they so see fit, they can pull out the stipends from the override question, reduce the amount, and vote next week to do whatever they want. But you still have to have a source of funds. So, that's the bottom line.
When's the deadline for, to get these, the ballot, these are ballot questions?
Ballot questions tonight. So what I'm
Tonight,
saying is,
okay.
if there's an appetite for the board to pull the stipends off the question and put it in, and all you have to do is identify a source. Now, you can identify any source you want, whether, it's against the recommendation of auditors, whatever, it's up to the board. But, that's how we arrived at where we were going when we were required back in December to balance the budget. We did so. Those were one of the things that were pulled out to balance the budget, as opposed to layoffs and dealing with a set amount of funds that we had. Now, we chose at that time not to use stabilization or free cash. And that was part of the policy that we tried to show some fiscal restraint as far as a board to deal with an overall problem that was identified from the last 3 audits that we had and identified by DOR. So, what's the pleasure of the board?
I think it's bad form to put our salaries back in the budget after we've got an override question that's gonna address a number of things, including that. I don't think it shows leadership on the question.
I don't think, I agree with you, Mike, it's not before us tonight. I think what's before us tonight is the override question. And I don't think the 2 items are mutually exclusive, and I would, as you know, I am not supportive of the timing of the override. I have no problems with the contents of the override. And I will, if given the occasion tonight, vote to support the inclusion of these items, but will not support the placement of this item on the town election ballot.
So what would you suggest as an alternative to go in with a budget that's
There's no motion before us right now.
I'm just following up, I'm trying to understand where you wanted to go with this. You were suggesting that you really were not supportive of having an override at this time. So what will we do for source of funds? Now, we're talking about additional funds here that we don't have. So how would we get those funds to do what we're asking to be done? If we don't have if we don't ask the voters for an override,
Let me be clear.
Right.
Next week, we're talking about the warrant.
right?
The source of funds for the stipends are on next week's discussion. It's part of the town meeting warrant. Tonight's discussion is about what are the ballot questions going to be.
That's your opinion.
No, I think we decided that 10 minutes ago.
Okay, well, let me be clear. In the question for an override, we have stipends. What's your opinion? Do you want to keep that in the override, or you want to discuss that next week and pull it? Or do you want to leave it in both?
Both.
Those are your options. You want to leave it in both?
Yes.
Steve, what's your opinion? Would you like to pull it?
Leave it in there, I just wanted to stay for the record, I thought it was a
Okay,
poor way of
so
doing
I
it.
guess we're back to the original amount of $391,526 for the town. The schools have their right to put in their amount. They put in $557,939. If you add those two together, you come up with $949,465. Then that would be question two for the
So
override.
I'll motion that that's question 2 for the override.
Have a motion? Anybody second? We have a second. Any other further discussion on this for the override? Hearing none, all those in favor of question 2 as outlined?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm
Aye.
opposed.
2 opposed, chair votes aye, it passes 3-2. Okay, next question is a non-binding question. Question 3, it's a non-binding for a sense of the voters question. Shall the town of Westport request the Board of Selectmen to place on the warrant article the annual town meeting to reduce the community preservation surcharge on real estate tax bills from 2% to 1%? This was pretty much what we had on before. Jack?
Mr. Chairman, the question is, did you take a vote on question 1 on the ballot?
We had voted that previously.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, we can, at the end, we can vote all 6, actually, just to make sure that everybody's comfortable with it. The question 3 was the wording. We had actually voted that one as well. Question 4,
Well, wait, no, 3, I sent an email to everybody asking you to clarify, because you were way off on your estimate. You said it
What
would be
was I way off on?
$150. On the non-binding, on the CPA, you stated that on a $300,000 house, it would be $300 in tax, half of that would be $150. It's nowhere near that, it's about $60. You were going from the assessment of the house where CPC comes off the
Well,
tax bill.
Well, the assessors are here this evening, maybe they could speak to it, but what we were saying was that $500,000 basically was the figure that Jack was using last time, and the $500,000 is similar to what we raise in community preservation for 2% each year. It's, within 50,000 one way or the other, depending on the particular year. We checked with the accountant a couple of weeks ago on that figure as well, and we said that if you're raising $500,000, and there are some people in town that said they'd be supportive of an override, if we would give some consideration for cutting back a little bit on CPC because of some of the things that CPC can't fund to be funded by the capital budget. So if you take $500,000 and you cut that in half, whatever figure you're using for assessment purposes, half of that then could be, recouped from the taxpayer for whatever the rate would be, because you'd be pretty much cutting down by 50%. So you could quibble about the dollar amount on a particular value of a home or whatever, but to raise $500,000 for tax purposes, we have in our detail tonight, we've got what that would cost.
I think the inference of the meeting was that was the entire override package of $1.5 million. Yes, if you're looking at a $375,000 house, which is the value, the example used in our handout, that's $500,000 would be an increase of tax of $63.75.
Right.
On a $375,000 house, if you cut the CPC from 2% to 1%, it would be a $28 savings.
Yeah, about $28. You said $150 last week. So I wanted to make sure that was very clear. It was way off.
Okay, well, what I had said, and the reason we had suggested to take a vote on this was to put some kind of relief in for people with CPC, and I quoted, I think I sent folks that had asked me, names of some folks that had requested that, because they were saying they would be supportive of a reduction in CPC, because some of the things that CPC could not fund are things that would be beneficial to the community. And this would be a way of doing it. It just so happened that the capital budget was for $500,000. It also so happened that basically in the course of a year, and a 2%, for the town, the raised 2% basically comes into $500,000 a year. If you split that in half from 2% to 1%, the difference then could go to help reduce that cost. That's what we were referring to. So if I misspoke or people misunderstood, I apologize for that. I don't think I did. I think that's basically, if you take 2%, you cut in half, that's 1%. If you take the 1% and contribute that to something else, that gives people an opportunity, for the people that asked, to be supportive of an override. For example, if we were able to do these through CPC, then we wouldn't necessarily have to put it in a capital stabilization fund, but because they don't qualify for CPC, it was an opportunity for some folks to say, I don't mind paying that if I can reduce that in a different way, and that's how we tried to arrive at it. So hopefully there's no misunderstanding of that now.
I think one further clarification. The way this ballot question is worded, there will be no change this year. We still have to have a town meeting vote and a vote of the town. And so it is highly unlikely that even if the voters on April 8th or whatever voted to go from 2% to 1%, that would not impact the tax period beginning July 1, 2014. It would be at some later date, assuming that town meeting and a subsequent town election agreed with that activity.
That's correct. And
So there's no relief. There's
Well-
potential for relief sometime in the future.
And that's, I think, what the taxpayers were asking, that approached me to say, can we put something like this on the ballot? I'm not suggesting, I said when I started this was a non-binding sense of the voter question. The idea would be that if there's a sense of the voters for that, then we would put something on a town meeting, and then we would go to the ballot. I'm not disagreeing with that. I am responding to requests that taxpayers had to put this on, to get a sense. As opposed to just going to town meeting, we could go to town meeting with an article on it right now. I didn't want to do that without getting a sense from a larger voter group to see if there was an interest in doing that. Some people said they'd be supportive of an override if this could happen this way. So that's, I said, well, this is the process that we would take. First would be to see if that's the feeling of the vast majority of people in the town. The only way you can do that is get a sense of the voters to do that. We all set with that one now? Okay, next question is a non-binding, sense of the voter question. Shall the town of Westport vote to have its elected treasurer become an appointed treasurer to the town? And that's a yes or no vote. We had voted on that one previously, and that's, again, the wording from the town council. Fifth question is, this is a non-binding sense of a voter question as well. Shall the town of Westport explore options to reduce the number of town-owned buildings and explore consolidation of operations in the remaining buildings? And that was a yes or no vote question. Any questions on that? The last one was question 6. This was the one that we talked about last week. This is a non-binding sense of the voter question. Shall the town of Westport support the building of a casino in a neighboring community within southeastern Massachusetts? Again, yes or no vote on that. Any questions on that one? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion that then we vote on the proposed ballot questions 1 to 6, so we just confirm all these in case there's any misunderstanding in previous meetings.
So motion.
Sorry.
Any questions? Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's 3-2. We have 6 ballot questions now to be sent forward to the town clerk's office. Okay, and the other part of that review was to deal with the special town meeting. We've set that to be next week, so we'll review the questions on the articles for the special town meeting warrant and also the annual town meeting warrant. We're doing it at 6 p.m. on March 3rd, and then be submitting it to the town clerk and the finance committee at that point thereafter. Next on the agenda is a public hearing. Applicants for requests for G Bowling W Incorporated, doing business as Holiday Lanes on 236 State Road, change of managers. Anybody present? Okay, and I don't see anybody here. Yes, sir, please come on down. In our packet, we have a application for local license authority. Hopefully, the board's had a chance to review this. Change of manager checklist, the certificate of vote, and a change of manager request. Any questions of the board? Sir, do you want to state your name and
Joseph Hostry, manager at Holiday Lanes, Westport.
any questions for Joseph? Any abutters?
No, nothing else is changing, it's just the management.
Just the management, that's it.
Has the board had a chance to take a look at this and the application procedure? Any questions from board members on this?
I move that we move it.
Second.
Motion in a second. Anybody in the audience want to be heard on this? Seeing none? Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. Time to approve, application will be forwarded.
Thank you.
Sir. Next, Brian Trahan, Environmental Partners, agreement for engineering services and water rate study and proposal for professional services, assistant water supply operator. Jack, you want to be heard on this? Is Brian here?
Brian Trahan and Linda Correa are both here.
Hi, folks, come on down and take.
Linda's the water system operator.
Hey, right there.
We have before you a proposal from Environmental Partners, from Ryan and his partner Steve Wilson, to conduct a water rate study. And as you know, there are many pieces to this little puzzle we're trying to put together, and Ryan's going to try and describe some of those things that we need to look at both immediately and in the future, depending on what happens, as we try to find a way to deal with trihalomethanes in the system without spending $1 million to do it. Ryan?
Good evening, thank you for having me. Thanks, Jack. Just wanted to, Jack had asked us for a proposal, as he said, to do a water rate study, and as you know, the town has been faced with significant costs, not only dealing with lowering the THMs in the water system from a study that we performed last fall, but also working with DEP to try to, as much as we can, delay the implementation of a treatment plant so that the town doesn't have to outlay all this money. So we've been working with DEP to get that postponed, and it seems like we potentially could have that done for about a year and have a year of some monitoring and implementation. But it also, within this whole process, is with the additional sampling, the advice from our firm, and other costs that have been incurred to date, it's been pretty evident that an increase in water rates may be necessary to cover this extra work. Never mind the fact, in order to cover the cost of the treatment plant construction and design, et cetera. So our proposal is to do a somewhat tiered water rate study. First would be to look at the current situation that's facing the town and its water enterprise fund, and see, with the increase in potential increase in cost to date within the next year, to see what kind of potential rate increase may be necessary, and then also come up with a rate structure that would be needed if the treatment plant if you were ordered to construct the treatment plant. So have essentially two different recommendations within the same report. In addition, the rate structure will also look at what's necessary to run the water system and make sure that everything, anything that we can see coming up through the regulatory, other than the implementation of the treatment plant, may be necessary, such as replacement of any water meters that may be in the future. DEP usually would like to see at least meters replaced every 10 years. So I'm not sure about the age of the existing meters, but that's just one item that we would be looking at during the study. So we really just want to look at it, all the costs that go into running a water system and anything that may be coming up in the future from DEP, but also looking at the detailed water usage of all your water customers from not only the past, but project them moving forward to the future.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the the other factor that we need to consider in all of this, looking forward to the special within the annual, is that we are going to need this fiscal year to supplement the water budget from retained earnings. Actually, for two reasons. One, you may recall that back in December, when DOR was about to set our tax rate, that they called and said, we're uncomfortable about the fact that your revenues seem to be lagging the authorization that you have to spend. The authorization was $150,000 for the year in the budget. The revenues would come in at a rate of what might be $130,000 for the year. So they wanted the board to sign, and you did, and us to send them a letter, and this was a condition of them setting our tax rate, that we would revisit the water budget and make the necessary adjustments to make sure that we finish the year in one piece. And that's going to mean a transfer from retained earnings. The town accountant is also present tonight. And we have, I think, over $140,000 in retained earnings. And so we can make a transfer in order to deal with the increasing costs that we've been experiencing. As Ryan mentioned, we've had to do additional testing. Linda's going to be telling you in a minute about some additional testing that we've had to do. The additional testing was to do more tests to find out what's happening with our THMs. In order to determine some other things that we might be able to do, we also hired Ryan's firm to help us to analyze where we could put some bleeders in the system, what other actions we could take to redirect the water. You may recall one idea he came up with was to turn off a service to White's in the front of the building, forcing their draw to be from their service on the back of the building, which would draw the water in a small loop in the system. So all of this takes time, it takes money, and was not initially budgeted in the budget for this year. Linda has done some recent testing in the system and found that we have a new problem. Linda, you want to explain the residuals problem that we have?
One of the things that we are required to do now is to fill out some new paperwork with the DEP. And when we take our total coliform sample, which is a monthly sample, they want us to, the DEP, hello? The DEP had requested that a free chlorine residual sample be analyzed, and the results came back very low. So it came back at a 0.04. The minimum is supposed to be a 0.20. So on yesterday, I went to the location. I have a small kit that's mine, and I ran about 12 samples, and I ran the water for about 30 minutes. The highest number I could get was a 0.13. So under those, the way the regulations are, if you can't get a 0.20 for free chlorine residual, you have to take 2 other bacteria samples. So instead of taking 1 per month, it'll be 3 per month. The bacteria sample is about $25 per sample, so it'll be an additional $50 per sample for the total coliform samples.
And that's monthly, is that right, Linda?
Yes, that's monthly.
That's not a lot of money, but this is just an indication
Very close.
of one of the problems that we're facing is that every time we turn around, there's something new and different that we need to consider and pay attention to that costs us some money. And this is a frequent occurrence now, and it's really basically impossible to anticipate what we might run into. We're doing the very best job we can. We're making plans now to put those bleeders and metered bleeders in place. We have an agreement with the city not to charge us up to a point for any water we waste trying to move water at a faster rate through the system in order not to form trihalomethanes in the system. Trihalomethanes again form when chlorine residual in the water meets up with organics in the water and forms the TTHMs. Now, you see, the chlorine residual not being adequate is another problem. The chlorine residuals being too high means that we're going to start forming THMs, and that's the biggest problem we've got. So even when we manage to get the one thing a bit under control with a little help from the weather, we turn around and something else is happening in the system.
So let me get this straight. We're looking to take money from retained earnings because we've based our rates on what was business as usual.
Right.
And so because of this problem, we're now having to test, we're having to hire a consultant, we're having to do another round of tests.
And make adjustments in the system, install new.
So on one track,
bleeders
we're
and
going to be dealing with the adjustments in the system, all of this additional testing, the cost of a consultant. And one of the products that the consultant will give us is how much should we be charging the ratepayers to maintain this higher level of oversight and quality, and B, to potentially, or the potential of having to put a new plant online.
That's correct.
And one of the variables that he's looking at is whether or not we should be looking at redefining rate classes, so this would fall differently on different types of users.
But that's a potential, although nobody's recommending it at this point.
Okay. So, I guess I understand the action requested tonight is to approve the contract.
Yes.
Is there another recommendation regarding retained earnings, and how much money does that involve?
Okay, this is the thing. This is at least a three-part process. The first thing we need to do is to determine what we're going to need in terms of dollars to address the needs that we have this year, okay? And that will tell us what we're going to need to do in terms of a transfer from retained earnings. I don't think there's going to be a problem with doing that. And we don't, I don't believe, have to think about increasing the rates immediately. The second step is to do a much more involved rate study, looking forward to all of the installation of all of these new mechanisms in the system, the metered bleeders, possibly 3 of them, and the redirection, the implementation of the change of the redirection of the water. The New Year budget is where we're going to have to consider a rate increase in the New Year's budget. Because we're going to be,
July 1st.
that's correct. Because we're going to be carrying out a lot of that work during that new year. And we need to, factor in some contingencies, depending on what we run into. So that's the first potential for a rate increase, I think. And then, if we're unsuccessful in solving the problem with the bleeders and the flushing and the redirection, and we don't come up with another mechanism for avoiding the construction of a $900,000 treatment plant, then the next phase of the rate study would go into effect and tell us what the big bang is going to be if we have to do that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, good, Mike.
Go ahead, Dick, sorry.
Oh, we know Florida they have to change their testing, so they're probably gonna be retweaking their water treatment. Number one, is that gonna help us, or is it gonna hurt us? you know, like you say, our chlorine is low, which helps us on the THMs. So we're still losing out, no matter what. Why can't we start now on the valve, the backflow through White's? Because my understanding, that's only going down there and just turning the valve and restructuring. At least that would be one section where we could be testing, you know, it'd take them 10 minutes to open the valve and redirect it, at least start testing that area. And is it making a difference? If it isn't, well, okay, at least we know. That's one of my questions.
Well, presently, because of the water's temperature, it's very cold. The samples that were taken both in January and so far in February, they're very low. The average between 29 and 55.
So changing just that route, coming in from the backside versus coming in from the, in other words, instead of coming directly from Far River, it's gonna go through a loop, you're gonna get on the back end, it's gonna increase more flow.
Right.
It wouldn't help us to start at least testing that now, even though it's cold.
Well, you won't,
And we have no costs. Right now, there's no cost involved. It's just turning the valve.
well, there's nothing to test right now. We have, this is a seasonal problem with the trihalomethanes. It's not going to become a problem until the weather warms up. So testing now isn't going to show anything.
It's gonna change. Something would change.
Yeah, well, again, first thing we need to do is to get a written agreement with the LaFrance family to take this action. And part of that involves making sure that the fire department has taken all the necessary steps to make sure that everybody in the department knows that if there's a fire call in that neighborhood, the first thing they do is open that valve.
Yeah, well, we had a meeting with LaFrance, the fire department, and you
Yeah.
were there, I know I was there, and, I don't know, were you there, Tom?
I was there.
And all this stuff was put to bed in the sense that LaFrance was 100% in agreement. And my only thing at the time, the fire department said, look, we just gotta if there's a major fire, LaFrance, it's gonna take 2 minutes. They gotta make sure they're gonna keep that area clean with snow. Just go there and redirect the water. So that wasn't an issue for the fire department. That's only a directive that should probably take them a half hour.
No, but we do
No.
need to have an agreement with,
Well, okay, but that's been going on, we've been waiting now, 2 months? I mean, and one of the things we made with France was the fact that, look, if in fact it would cause harm to your building as it, you could revert back to the original way. So it was really, how can I say, it was a win-win situation for him. And rightfully so, I wouldn't wanna say we're changing everything around, then he's stuck with a real problem. But my understanding was it wasn't gonna be a real problem, it's just gonna be redirecting that water there. So there's really nobody arguing, saying we can't do it. So I think it's just the town, we're dragging our feet on that one. Let's get this thing going, up and ready. That's the only way I'm standing.
Wouldn't
That group was in agreement.
Wouldn't there be a benefit at least to getting the whole pressure drop question out of the way? Because that was the big issue about that rerouting, as I recall.
yeah, Ryan worked on that, Ryan?
Correct, yeah. As far as like a typical average day for whites, nothing really would change. They probably wouldn't even notice the pressure drop. It was maybe 1 or 2 pounds PSI that we saw, pounds per square inch. The issue that we saw was if you bring that flow down to 20 PSI, so if a fire department were to hook up to one of the hydrant, they'd have about 200 to 300 gallons per minute less at their disposal to fight a fire. So that was the reason to bring in the fire department to say, we need to open this valve, yep, if there's an issue.
So if an emergency, they'd switch back, how they resolve that.
So I just have a couple of questions, if I could, Tony. Jack, what are the retained earnings for our water department, if you will, and can we presume that those are all profits from, money
Yes.
paid in by the customers?
Yes,
Okay, so diverting some of those funds is not, we're not taking from Peter to.
no,
So,
absolutely
okay.
not.
And what's the order of magnitude here we're talking about? How much is in retained earnings and how
I
much?
think
are we-
it's 141,000, is that so?
And we're
147,000.
talking about maybe $20,000 shortfall?
That's one of the first things we need to find out.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the placement of the meters. I can't remember if it was you, Ryan, or if it was Linda, but,
I didn't mean to really confuse anybody, but that's just an example of something that I would go and look at. Every water supplier, even a consecutive system, their ratepayers, essentially you're in charge of the meter that's in each person's basement, and Usually after 10 years or so, they start to under-register. They never seem to over-register, they under-register, so people start to get free water. The DEP recommends every 10 years you replace each meter. Usually, in most recommendations and most water suppliers have a meter rental charge in their rate structure that essentially covers the cost of the meter.
Well, that's my question, is meter replacement built into our billing? Is that,
Currently, I believe the customer, when they sign on, buys their own meter, and they're responsible for it. That's what I am under the understanding.
so we would have to force people to buy new meters?
No,
Or built into the rate.
yeah, I don't want to, start a process here. It's more of, we would have to look at how they're handled, and if that was the case, if the homeowner personally owns each meter, there has to be somewhere that, in the town's favor, that says some expiration date on when you need to replace it, because they will, or are tested to show that it's still registering accurately.
So it's easy enough for us to figure out if we have taken this into account properly in our billing structure. That's just a question that we can get answered at some
Yep.
point, right?
Yeah, it's just one of the things I'll be checking
Okay.
off as I go through the process.
So the next question is, you refer to the new problem as pre-chlorine residuals?
Free chlorine.
Free chlorine, got it, okay, so that's why it's showing a too low of a level of chlorine. And is this something that's seasonally adjusted by Fall River?
Well, I guess I just found out tonight, but I would think that we'd have to go back to at least the entry point from Fall River and see what the residual is. And if it is if it's that coming into the town, then we know it's something from either Fall River has lowered their dosage with their treatment processes, or unless we have any more information on that, or Linda.
On Sunday, I actually took a sample at my home, which is the other side of the city, but it's quite far from the treatment plant, and I got a 0.60 at my house. So
That's fine.
That's typical, usually.
Yeah.
that's usually what I would think it would be in the city.
So you would probably say that's what it is on, coming into to the town? It should be somewhere in that ballpark.
Yes, I would
Well,
think
to
so.
be careful in making assumptions on that, depends on what part of the city. The city in the past has had some problems in 2 or 3 areas, very similar to Westport. And with the new standards now that's coming out, so the problem that we were having was similar to 2 or 3 parts of the city. So depending on what neighborhood, you're probably more aware than I am in terms of the neighborhoods to be careful about. But that's one of the concerns in terms of what's being done with the city of Fall River right now, and it's that impacting our own testing. I would hope that we would start off with that.
It's clear that we,
Well, let's give everybody a chance, and I can come back to you, Craig, if it'd be okay. Are you done, Michael?
Yes, for now.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, and then Craig has some. I have a question on compensation. It's, this contract is not to exceed 5,000, I'm very comfortable with that. But what's the, is it an hourly basis, or what's, I don't see anything else in the contract to address besides the not to exceed 5,000.
Typically, if we say not to exceed, it would be on a lump sum basis. I'm
So it is 5,000.
correct, 5,000 flat fee, but if the board feels more comfortable doing it as time charge plus expenses, I would have no problem doing it that way either,
Not to exceed 5,000.
not to exceed 5,000.
I prefer something like that, because this is kind of open-ended. We don't know what we're getting into at this point, but at least we can put a cap on it. We might have to revisit it, and I think that'd be a mutual situation, but I didn't see, as people were talking, I was reading through the paperwork here, and I didn't see anything that, pinpointed that a little bit more, and I'd be more comfortable to do that. I don't know what the board members may feel on that issue, but that would be a concern I would have. Secondly, Jack, I do think we need to get this letter. The France family has expressed interest in supporting us on this, and maybe we give that a priority over the next couple of weeks and try to see if we can come back and finalize the situation. The testing piece that we're doing now, I think it's appropriate, but I do have some concerns without knowing what's being done in Fall River. I don't want to make any assumptions of what we're testing in Westport until we know that part of it as well.
Yeah, one of the things I had suggested is the next time they do the flushing, is that we could go out and actually take some samples out along the road.
They told us last summer they were going to do that. They were going to notify us before the,
So we're going to coordinate
Okay.
that, yes.
because otherwise we're kind of, we're going to have to redo the test anyways, because we need to really go in with the data and some assumptions of what Fall River's doing that's factual, so we can then build what we're doing our own testing on.
Well, when we do the flushing,
Yep.
the monthly flushing, you can actually take samples along Route 6 and Davis Road and the end of Route 6.
I mean,
And-
has the city of Fall River changed their addressing the bacteria issues in the city, for example, by their own processing?
Bacteria,
Yeah,
I don't know if they've had an issue with bacteria.
well, off and on they did. And that
Well,
was
we're gonna have a sit-down
Okay.
with all the players in Fall River and coordinate our activities to maximize the effect that we get, the positive effect that we get.
Greg?
I mean, I just think that we can continue discussion, but I'd like to get a motion on the floor to approve the contract with Ryan and his team. And I guess, based upon your comments, Tony, you want to insert some changes to the compensation
Number-
section of the
number
contract.
4.
Yeah, number 4.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Just spell that out a little bit more if you would for us. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any other comments, Steve? You have any thoughts on this? Okay, hearing no other questions, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. As far as next steps, Jack?
Well, there's also an agreement for some additional sampling being done. Instead of having the lab do it, we're going to have someone else do it. Do you have that before you?
We do. Tara Ann Mountain, assistant.
Tara Ann Martin. Tara is working with Bob Bouchard. This would be a contract arrangement. Linda, could you outline for the board the savings that might result as opposed to having the lab do these particular tests?
Well, one of the reasons I had recommended to Jack that we get someone other than the laboratory to take these samples is that, I was just looking these results over with Ryan, is that it's important that the sample line be flushed for an extended period of time, which the laboratory doesn't usually have that kind of time to do that. They come in, they take their samples, and they move on to the next location, their next customer. And it appears that the sample that's taken at 275 State Road is actually usually higher than the one that's taken at the very end of State Road, which is 645 State Road. And I feel the reason behind that is that the water usage is very low at 275 State Road, and the sample line's not flushed long enough. So we're going through all this effort to do all this with the blow-offs and all the flushing and trying to come in compliance. I think it's important when the sample is taken that it's taken correctly and in order for the line to be flushed. I think it would be important to get somebody on board other than the laboratory to do it. And the laboratory is going to charge a fee to come to Westport to take these samples anyway.
And Jack, your recommendations would be to go with Tara as an employee of the town. She could do this?
No, she's not acting as an employee of the town. One of the things that she does in addition to currently working for the town of Westport as a conservation agent, she works for another firm as she's an assistant water systems operator. Bob Bouchard is the name of the individual that's the head of the company that she works for. And so she currently does a number of samples or testing at different facilities in the town. I think she does the housing authority, some pizza shops in town, and some schools in town right now, private schools. So this firm is already in town doing work. She's doing work under his guidance. And so basically, this would be a contract with them to do this testing. It's something that she does on a regular basis, and she's licensed to do.
So who's the contract with? Is it with Tara or is it with Bob Bouchard Company?
Well, I'm going to talk to Bob about how he wants this to be structured, and so that I don't have a final form for you. But I did want to outline to you potential savings involved. And perhaps next week when you meet, we can get a contract document
So you're
signed.
recommending, Linda, that we consider this.
Yes.
Any questions from board members on this? So more to come on it, but maybe a way of reducing and staying on top of this a little bit better, reducing our costs at the same time. Good. Any other questions for Brian or Linda while they're
I
here?
do have a question for Linda. Back to this method of sampling.
Yes.
What is it that the law is looking for when you have limits? Is it meant to be point of use without flushing, or is this an accepted technique to flush the immediate line to see what the water quality is?
Well, we should be taking a representative sample of what's in the distribution system. And because 275 State Road doesn't use very much water, that water could be sitting there for a
Long time.
long time, which really isn't representative of what's in the distribution system.
Thank you.
And I think if I remember, do they have a large service coming onto their property, like a fire service? They may,
6-inch.
6-inch, so they may have a larger service than they need.
Hmm.
More volume.
We have larger pipes than we need.
Right.
We also have larger pipes than we currently need.
Any other questions, Brad? Okay, I think we're all set. I appreciate you folks coming in.
Thank you very much.
Brian, do you know what's happening in Freetown? I mean, they have that water treatment plant that the state is suggesting we install, and they're having problems. Have they found any solutions to their problems with the treatment plant?
I'll know more after Wednesday. Actually, I have a meeting with the commission on Wednesday. DEP has essentially instructed them to move their facility that's there now to a permanent facility. So there's some work to get things up to, almost not up to code, but excuse me, but up to the level of acceptable for a permanent treatment facility.
Okay.
So yes, they are being instructed by DEP to make it a permanent facility.
Is the treatment facility going to change in terms of process that they're using at all?
No, they're
Do
going
you
to,
anticipate the outcome to be any different?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a way that you can optimize the treatment. I think we mentioned in the past that chlorine sometimes will react or get absorbed by the carbon. Carbon will absorb chlorine a lot more easily than THM, so typically we would like to put in something that would quench the chlorine before it would even reach the carbon. And just doing that alone may double the life of the carbon that they have right now. So something that would be designed for your treatment system if, you have to go down there. Yeah.
Hopefully that'll never happen, though.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Next on the agenda, Affordable Housing Trust, TCB, discuss the next steps in TCB regarding Nokichoke tax application. In our packets this week, we received kind of a detail. Craig, do you want to speak to this? You're a member of the group.
I think I defer to the chair, the vice
Okay.
chair.
Is the chair, vice chair, want to come up? Ms. Collins?
I think the housing specialist is here as well.
Oh, okay.
And we have TCB here.
Folks want to come down, we can address the board on this. In the packets, we have the application. We also have a letter that kind of details in the application a little bit more. If I recall, our previous meeting, we talked about applying again in the first of the year sometime, but people said end of January, February. And I think this is what we received is, that next step, but I'll defer to you folks at this point.
Yes, so DHCD resubmitted a pre-application for the full round back in January 17th. And we were given the green light to go ahead and submit a full tax credit application with DHCD. It's due on the 21st, about 4 weeks from now.
You need to speak a little closer to the microphones, I guess, folks.
Would you like me to repeat that?
Maybe you should.
Sure. So I was just saying, we submitted a pre-application for Nokichoke Village to DHCD for tax credits and other sources on January 17th, and we were invited to go ahead and submit a full application, and those are due March 21st, about 4 weeks from now.
This is the first time that that DHCD has invited us to submit the full application, so it's a big deal. This is good news.
And what you're asking from the town is a letter of recommendation and support for your application?
Yes.
That's right.
Board, have any questions, any folks on this? Or Craig, do you want to speak to this first, or?
Well, I think this is what we were waiting for. I think that clearly the project can't move forward without the tax credits being awarded by the state. I think we also are pleased that we're still looking at a mixed income configuration here with the apartments, and that is an element, if you see on page 1. So I would recommend that we write a letter of support. As you all know, there's a number of steps in the process towards getting the project together, but this is one step, and this is one step that allows the nonprofit developers to put together and to assess the level of support that we need for financing.
Anybody else? Michael? Yeah.
Do we have a list of all of the grants,
Mike,
funding?
push that in there.
Do we have a list of all the grants and funding that you all would like us to sponsor and apply for in your name? This is one of them. We have MassWorks.
Right, we do. So this DHCD application is for multiple sources, but they're all consolidated into one application. And those are the sources that are listed in the attachment provided. It's the sources and uses page. In addition, we intend to pursue 2 other potential sources of financing for the project. One is the MassWorks program for infrastructure. That would be due in September of this coming year. Another source is the Federal Home Loan Bank through their affordable housing program, also due in September.
And that's the sheet of paper, Michael, if you have that.
The first one.
Yeah. It makes reference to both of those grants.
So this is, was one of my concerns before, is that, we negotiated a price for this, but and that was what we were gonna do for you, or what you were gonna do for us. But what we're gonna do for you, I just want it to be all contained, defined, and wrapped up as one package. And so there's really only 2 other things that you anticipate coming to us for assistance as far as endorsing, signing, promoting to obtain grants.
That's correct.
And that's MassWorks and this second piece here, Federal Home Loan Bank. Okay. And the only other question I had was, I think it was asked, I don't know if it was tasked or not, but when we had our meeting several months ago, there was quite a bit of discussion about why can't we go the purchase route or the selling route versus renting route. And just doing math in my head, if you're talking about 50 units and you sell them for even half of the average market price, it seems as though that addresses a lot of funding that you're chasing. But there was some reason why we weren't pursuing that route. And can you explain that to me?
Sure. So the community builder's proposal to Westport for the Nokotok Village project was for rental housing, and the reason that we did not submit a proposal for homeownership, I can only speak to our reasons, is because there isn't, well, until this year, there has been no subsidy resources for affordable homeownership development. There used to be programs, a program at the state level. DHCD used to give out money. It suspended that program when the recession hit and the mortgage crisis hit. It is on a pilot basis introducing a program now. A funding round is coming out now. It's the first time funds have been available for homeownership in 5 or 6 years. But the funding level is not sufficient, in our estimation, to support the costs of building on this site. So it would, we did a back-of-the-envelope calculation about homeownership. So if the development costs that we're looking at for our program, which is rental, and it's multi-unit buildings, but it works out to
About 290,000 per unit.
per unit, to meet DHCD's requirements for sales prices, we would have to sell units at between $160,000 and 180,000 per unit. So the difference between the cost to build and the cost that we can, and the price that we can sell it at exceeds $100,000 per unit.
But that price range, though, that was to meet what requirement?
That's the requirement to, that is the, so we looked at it both at the 80% AMI requirement, which is required by the Nookwood Village Overlay District. So that those prices are in that range for a 2 and a 3 bedroom, 80% of area median income. The sources, the subsidy sources that are available now for the first time through DHCD restrict the sales prices and the income limits even further to 70% of area median income. So the sales prices would, so we had done the calculation at 80% AMI to match the overlay district and came up with pricing of about 160 to maybe 190,000 for a 2 or 3 bedroom unit. They would be even discounted below that to meet the 70% area median income restriction to make the project eligible for DHCD funding.
So by selling them for something under $170,000, you do qualify then for some type of funding?
You could, yeah.
Okay. I mean, just if you sell them for $200,000 apiece, it seems as though they would still be a great deal, and it would be $10 million that you wouldn't have to chase.
Right, but we couldn't sell them for $200,000 apiece.
You can't get the DCHD funding if you're selling for $200,000. And we're finding this out. We're doing a home ownership program with the Housing Trust, and we're trying to get maybe 2 or 3 applications, and we have had only a handful of applicants. We're caught in that 70% vice requirement of the state, combined with the market rates in the area, combined with the income rates in the town. So what we're looking at is, in our situation, it really does make sense in terms of providing housing opportunity to do this development as a rental and not as a purchase. And we've had our own little laboratory trying to do it in the private market. And we're probably going to have 1 or 2 units put online, but not without an awful lot of effort, trying and work on behalf of the staff and members of the trust.
All right, so I'm coming late to this process, as everybody knows, so I don't have a lot of credibility to reform it, if you will, but my preference is to people that own things. If people own things, they take care of them. If people rent things from somebody who's not making a profit, I'm worried about, in the long run, who's going to care about this property. So that's where I come from now, and I guess I would be really interested to see some of those models to see why it doesn't work for owning. But to go back to the other component of this, which is a town component, and that is the pilot program. We voted down the pilot program as proposed. What are we going to do about that?
Well, our suggestion is that we reintroduce the pilot concept to town meeting when the project's been funded and the project schedule is more clear, and we can provide greater detail on timeline, program mix, when the marketing component of the project will take place, when the construction will take place. It'll be, I think, a more real discussion at that point.
Okay, because just again, to register my humble opinion, I don't know why it was voted down, but I know why I voted against it, and that was because I think it was too generous to the project to burden the taxpayers with probably a higher proportion of services that are going to come from that development at a very low compensation rate. So that being said, I hope that you take that into account when you come back.
May I make a couple of comments? At the December meeting, December 2013 meeting, there was quite a bit of talk about, this is the first time we heard all rentals. Remember that? We went through that. And I didn't have my documentation with me, but I knew it wasn't the first time. In fact, in December of 2011, there was a presentation to the Board of Selectmen that said they were going to be all rentals. And the Board of Selectmen at that time voted to sign the P&S. The other thing that might be interesting is if there was a great article here in the Herald News about housing and housing swings. And on this side is home ownership, and on this side is rentals, and how much rentals are needed. And they seem to be more needed right now. I think you have to read both sides of the argument. And I think when we kind of throw out things like, well, you know, if you own it, you take better care of it. I'd like to see somebody do a study of that before I, believe that, because I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, it can be in some cases, but not in all cases. And what else did I have here? I had some other documentation to, I think that's it. But the important thing is to remember that rentals were brought up, first of all, in the RFP. We asked for the majority of them to be rentals. And in 2011, this came to each member of the Board of Selectmen, and we sent all, and that was 2 years ago. So, and I advise you to read this article. It's very, very interesting.
I saw that this morning. I saw that this morning.
Oh,
Now,
did you read it?
I read a little bit of it.
Okay.
As I said, I don't have a lot of credibility because I wasn't here in 2011.
No, I know that.
But I just think as a matter of common knowledge, it's just people take care of their own property and business a lot more than they will take care of a rental. But that being said, I did read the proposal, or the RFP, and we invited both, but we also discouraged the ownership piece by the statement that you just said. We strongly encourage all rentals, which I think, looking back, if I were sitting there at the time, I would have taken exception to that, but I wasn't, so.
Yeah,
I think, again, it's the context of the times. This RFP was released
Yep.
when the market crashed, when the low end of mortgage lending dried up, and when banks were not putting money into the kind of projects that might have been desirable from a home ownership perspective. And I think that what we were looking at is seeing that irrespective, we had done some surveys of town employees and of others, that to keep young people, or even people that are nearing retirement and becoming empty nesters in town and living in town, that we thought we needed to have an expanded affordable housing component. And we saw this as the best, most expeditious way of doing it. We left the option for home ownership available, but knew that given the context of the times we were in, the fact that programs had been disbanded, as pointed out here, for home ownership by the state, that while if somebody came in with some sort of magic bullet, we'd look at it, but we weren't expecting nothing more than a dominant rental. I think this is a good project. I think it meets a need for the town. I think it's an opportunity that we'll have to discuss on a number of occasions going forward. But I think the opportunity that presents itself today, if you'd like to get this letter of support in on behalf of TCB, so that they can submit an application, which they have not been able to do for this project, to DCHD for tax credits. And so I make that in the form of motion.
Second.
Okay, let's continue on before, I'll give other people an opportunity to be heard on this if they want to, before we take a vote on it. Anybody else want to hear it?
We're gonna have 50% rental, and I was, I would like to see some home ownership inside of it, but it's gonna be 50% rental. Is it, first option goes to Westport residents, do they have, or it's, as a lottery, it could be any place?
70%.
Has to be, or could, so only 70% would be technically Westport residents.
We're allowed to create a preference for 70% of the units to Westport residents. It could end up being more than that, but the preference can only go to 70% under state requirements.
Okay. The other thing is, and I just take exception that I think you're gonna take your home better if you own it. In my previous lifetime, I can go through numerous areas that were part of whatever you wanna call them, where it was, with total rental, inside of the place, and they were devastated. Some they had to knock down, several they knocked down, and they just blow them apart. So, and I gotta give credit to the Housing Authority, they work hard, they maintain it only and all that, but there's other issues inside there where it's a constant battle where they don't have the ownership of it, and I've seen it from my other career.
I think we all
Okay,
have.
Okay, if we could, are you done with,
I'm done.
okay, Steve?
Oh, in my experience, it's easier to track down somebody renting down a place and get on them like Four Rivers doing with their absentee landlords. To me, you know, I'd like to see some homeownership there too, which there is, but, you know, I think it's easy enough to get down on, you know, homeowners.
I'm losing folks here, where is the
Yeah,
homeownership?
Yeah.
you
I
said,
know.
Are we talking about the
Dick,
same?
you said
I thought we were gonna have
50%.
something on the side of that, there was gonna be
There's
something.
nothing. It's
Okay.
all rentals.
All right, then I apologize. But yeah, you know, it's still, in my opinion, you could still track down the homeowners.
Okay. So, the only comments I would make on this is the number of units that we have down here. There's 13 one-bedroom, 28 two-bedroom, and 9 three-bedroom in the application. And that's what I was reading just here.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So what we're currently showing is, there must have been an amendment since then, but what it should read is 15, 30, and 5. 15 ones, 32s,
50,
and
35,
5.
and, yeah.
So I apologize, there must be a typo in
And
there.
that's on this.
Well, that was a concern, because I want to make sure we're looking at material that we're voting on tonight is accurate. So this was what was handed out, Diane. I think, any board members have different?
No, this is the cover.
This is the cover.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
That
but
you're-
I understand that, but this is the application that was given to us this evening. So I'll just correct it. So if you could, on page 3 of the application that we're looking at, or page 2, down at the bottom where it has units mix, that needs to be corrected. One bedroom, there's 15, two bedroom, there's 30, and three bedroom, there's 5.
Are there any,
Not a problem, I just want to make sure we get accurate
Yeah, no.
information. So we're not
It's a
debating this 6 months from now.
Sure,
It
it's
comes
a-
in, that's all.
It's a total of 50 units.
Yeah, yeah, that's,
Yeah, but I think he's referring to, the count for each bedroom.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm assuming this is the pre-application. I don't know if you people realize this is part of what we received.
Oh,
And that's different than this piece here that we
Yeah.
received that you just passed out, so.
I think the difference is that the market rate units, instead of being 2 2s and 4 3s,
it should be the other way around.
that-
Two
Right.
So that's
ones
an
and 4
error.
threes. Yeah, there's no unrestricted
That's an
threes.
error on
So
the
that's an
application.
error.
Can't find my,
are there any other changes that are not reflected in the application right now?
the numbers in the application were all approximates, We will get letters of interest from construction lenders, from tax credit
So it's
investors.
all 60.
I'm sorry, the financing numbers.
If I could go back to the
Sure.
questions. The question, 60% and below, there's, at one bedroom, there's 9? Or is that changed?
No, 9,
9, and two bedrooms, there's 21?
correct?
And three bedrooms is 4?
Correct.
And then it skips down to 30% below, and it's 4, 5, and 1.
That's
That's
correct.
correct.
Okay. And there's no market rates anymore.
No, there's two
Two
market rates.
one-bedroom market rates and 4
They still stay.
two-bedroom market
Okay.
rates, yep. So
Okay.
it sounds like it just got bumped up.
Okay, all right. It's the only questions I had. Have a motion and a second on the floor?
I just
Yeah.
have-
Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yeah, audience?
John Alden, is this subsidized rentals or affordable rentals? There's a big difference between those two words.
So how do you, we would say that, well, can you explain how you
Do
understand?
you
the
receive income coming from the state to subsidize the amount of rent that a person is paying for their rental unit? If they're paying a 40% or 60% rate, does the state subsidize the balance to you folks?
So, I'm sorry? Yeah. So a small portion of the units will have, the units that are set aside under the community-based housing program will have operating assistance, that would be how we would call it, operating assistance associated with those units.
So there'd be no, use the term probably loosely, Section 8 type of credits in these apartments?
Section 8 is a form of operating assistance. These units would have either Section 8 or something called a Massachusetts rental voucher program.
Okay, thank you.
How many would qualify under that?
I believe, 8, 8.
Up to 8 units.
Is that in the document that we're looking at all?
In the pre-application that you have, it should
In any
be.
document? I just trying to reference it, that's all.
It should be.
Yeah, actually, in the unit mix and rent.
Do you have that document that he has right there? I can't find that. That's what he's referring to.
No, I'll take any document, I just want to make sure that we're
Yeah,
not
so in the
debating
packet-
this
in the package
down the
there-
road, folks, that's all.
In this package here.
Okay, so it's in this
Yep,
package?
there's a unit mix and rental schedule.
Okay,
You'll see that it has the,
so 8 of the units could be pretty much subsidy housing.
yes,
Okay. 8 of the 50. I think that answers your question, John.
Where is that noted?
the unit mix and rent schedule.
On this here?
Looks like
Oh, on
this.
this here.
It's in that packet. There's another.
Do you have a copy, John?
Does that prohibit the others from being subsidy as well,
Does that?
by design?
It means that the resources that we're asking for the other units are just the resources to build the units, not to operate them.
But that's just a minimum of 8 that you could put there. You could put 12, section 8, or 15, section.
Well, the maximum we could ask for would be 8.
I understand the maximum
Of
you
the
can ask
project
for,
base.
you've told us that, but is there anything that prohibits you later on from additional funding for that purpose? Could we end up where we have better than 50% of subsidized housing? I think it was part of what the question was earlier. And based on the documents, I'm trying to figure that out. Anybody have an answer to that?
I'm still not sure I'm understanding the question. So,
If I may, that's not all of the project. The idea is to keep a small portion of subsidized units and the other one over the 60% of the area median income, up to 60% of the area.
That's the goal of the project? And if the town was uncomfortable with the mix later on for some reason, what recourse would the town have?
Increase the number of subsidized units?
No, if it had been increased, and assuming that we heard here tonight that the goal was to put a max and a cap on it, how would the town be able to take recourse on that, based on this contract?
I don't think we're planning on that, but the license.
right, so the program that we're talking about has 34 units that will be tax credit units without any kind of operating subsidy. So I think that's what you're asking. So we have a program that shows up to 8 units with operating subsidy. It looks like 2 30% AMI units without operating subsidy.
That's correct, yeah. So the 3 CPH units, the community-based housing units, and then up to 5 of the 30% tier.
Okay.
I think the question is, can you play with these numbers and make the operating subsidy more than what it is?
Can we play with it? No, we will, so we can only ask for up to 8
Okay.
projects.
Project-based
That is
section of
CHCD's maximum.
Because it amounts to double dipping. If you're asking the Commonwealth for a tax credit for 34 units, and then you're asking for an operating subsidy for 8 units, and then you're essentially having unsubsidies, non-subsidies for another 8 units. I may be mixing a number up here. You're really, you're going to the same source. You're going to DCHD for all of these sources. And I think that what you're suggesting, and I don't think is possible, is it amounts to double dipping. It amounts to saying you're going to do something with this and then getting another state assistance for a different type of program.
So if we receive these operating subsidies, we will execute a contract with DHCD that indicates the contract is good for 8 units within the project. And it will only cover those 8 units. I think that
Yes,
is
right.
what you're asking, okay.
Michael, do you have a question?
Yeah, just briefly, I understand the board's line of questioning for the project. It's something new, it's unique for Westport. In my experience as a landlord in the past for subsidized programs, I agree that typically a tenant has less commitment to care of the property. And I might suggest that you ask the company for a list of the properties that they maintain within a 20-mile radius of here, and perhaps you could become more comfortable with some of the projects that they have under their management at this time. I make that as a
I
suggestion.
think it's a good suggestion, and candidly, the Affordable Housing Trust has been to all of them. And we've not limited ourselves to a 20-mile radius, we've gone to 50 miles. And one of the reasons why we like TCB is that they have developed properties in communities very much like Westport. They've developed properties in Chatham, they've developed properties on Martha's Vineyard. So in coastal communities where you're looking at a very different type of demographic than some of the examples that have been given this evening.
Right. And we invite, we'd be happy to host any of the members of the board at any of these properties. We could arrange a tour. We could put you in touch with the property managers. We would like you to go see these properties because
You made that offer before. I
Yeah.
was at a meeting down in Macamore School where you offered that to the residents in the area, the butters, and had some pictures and some slides to
Yep.
show that, so.
Well, we
I
all
think
went
that's a
to
question.
Chatham, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was, you know,
Yeah.
when you talk about rentals, I could probably find 50 places in Westport right now that are home ownership that you couldn't hold a candle to in Chatham.
And I would just offer as well that the Community Builders, we're a nonprofit, but we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. We've been around for a long time, done a lot of development and management in Massachusetts, and we have a track record that we're proud of, and we will take good care of these units.
And I think what makes a difference is that there's somebody on site all the time, just like Greenwood Terrace, you know, to answer any questions or solve any problems. When I say all the time, not at night, certainly, but, you know, during the day. And that's why you see Greenwood Terrace looking the way it does. We've got a nice housing.
Well, that partially addresses one of my last questions, Tony, and I promise. Two questions. Back to all the sources of fundings. You're still planning on getting an additional $1 million from affordable housing or CPC here in Westport for this project? Is that what I see, the $1 million line item there?
No, that's a state source.
That's a state source.
Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay,
Fund.
very good.
It would be requested as part of the application going in this March.
Okay, so our CPC has made its contribution to this project, and you don't anticipate going and asking for more funds?
That's correct.
Okay. And there was a great amount of time spent with concerns of the local residents and butters at the meeting in, was it November, Liz? About the potential tenants. And there was a lot of talk about criminal records. Did we ever, I mean, there was some statements made and some assertions made about what the level or the bar would be for becoming a tenant there. Have we backed off of that at all, or are we still pretty solidly behind the statement that the criminal record will prevent somebody from being
Because
a
you're
tenant?
dealing with DHCD, you can't back off from that.
Right. We'd be happy to share the marketing plan that we'll probably, we do have to submit a draft marketing plan as part of this financing package. We're happy to share that plan with the board.
But I think the assertion was made after some discussion that we would not be allowing, I think, Eliza, you might have made it, that we would not allow folks to come in who had criminal records.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that something we're backing off of
You're talking
now?
about quarries now.
Of course, yeah, that's a standard
Everybody's
part.
gonna be
Yeah.
quarried.
That's a standard part of our screening package.
I realize that, but is it actually a showstopper?
I will share the copy of the marketing plan with you, so you can
Okay.
see it.
There's so many you can do in the state, Michael.
That's one of the reasons we're a little cautious about working with the state when they put so many
But
criteria around it.
unfortunately, we got lots of units around town, it's a lot worse.
Well, it's still a concern that we need to provide some leadership on. Last question, Michael, I need to move on in this.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. It's just, I, as an individual taxpayer, was also looking to know more about your company. I won't be down in Chatham. It's easy enough for me to get to New Bedford. So I don't know how many units you have under your management in New Bedford, rough idea? Maybe I can take a drive-by.
I don't know those numbers offhand, but if we can exchange contact information, I can get you that information.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Those opposed? Chair votes aye. I didn't hear 4 ayes. People abstaining or what? What's that?
I opposed.
You opposed? So it's 4-1? Are you,
I'm opposed.
you're opposed? So it's 3-2. Okay. 3-2, and we have voted on the recommendation. We'll write up a letter. I have a sample draft here that was given to me just as we were starting the meeting tonight. I haven't read it, but it looks like I'll be signing it, so if you want to take a look at it this evening, folks, and give me some feedback if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll read it and make some adjustments and sign it, but I'll certainly entertain input from any board members on it as well. Thank you, folks. Good luck.
Thank you
Could I
very
ask
much.
just one question before we leave? By the vote, does that mean that Westport would not choose to look at affordable housing ever?
No, the vote was 3-2 to support this.
Yeah, to support it.
Right.
But 2 people voted against it, and I just wondered whether or not, you know, are we gonna be spinning our wheels in the future? If we wanted to do another project like this, I just,
Well, I think you heard some of the concerns. I mean, I had them too, and I voted for it.
Yeah.
So I'm in good faith taking the next step here and seeing how it's going, but there are some serious concerns. I share concerns in terms of ownership. I know you have a difference of opinion on
Yeah.
that, but I rent out property, and also I see some value with people having some ownership in the property that they have as well. And I'm concerned, as some of the folks had raised the issue tonight, in terms of income levels and subsidize and impacts that would have in public safety. We haven't consulted with the police, but I would think that would be a concern from the public safety standpoint as well. So there are a lot of issues there that we need to address. So I can't speak for other board members, but if you're asking me, I mean, I supported it this evening, and hopefully we can continue to do so, but I do it with a lot of caution.
okay.
And just one last step. I know I voted against it. I think if it's gonna go forward, and I think you're gonna be the, how could I say, for lack of a better word, we're gonna be looking how you're managing this thing and say, wow, this is really managed well, it's a good move, then you come back and say, let's do another thing. I think you get a lot more.
It's gonna be a case study.
This case study, whatever it's gonna be, and that's it.
I would ask that CPC take another look at affordable housing restrictions on property that's in town now and allow some folks to remain in their homes and possibly put a restriction on it in terms of sales. So we talked about that when you and I served on CPC together, and at the time, folks were looking in a different direction. But I
They
do
were,
think
yeah.
there's some ways of bridging the gap for ownership on homes
Yeah.
that can make them affordable, and those homes aren't going to be sold for big dollars
Yes.
in any market. But it would allow people to stay and stay in their homes, and just
Yeah.
another option for
I
some folks.
was, you know, a proponent of that, but
Yeah.
it didn't go very far.
I know, but hopefully it could be looked at again. Maybe it's another day. I mean,
Yeah.
we just talked about it today in terms of the market value for a home and the gap that's in there. If affordable housing restriction would pay that gap. And
That's
then
right.
there would be a restriction on that property when it's sold to be sold at an affordable rate. To me, that makes sense, but,
It's worked wonderfully. I remember the institute that,
Yeah.
yeah.
so in reference to the future, hopefully that's something that we would look at as well.
Yeah.
And it might be something that you folks could even pursue a little bit on a couple of units.
It's probably a more financially feasible way of doing it rather than new construction, which has
Exactly, yep.
And
sort
we're,
of higher costs
we're
associated.
looking at,
Yep.
look at,
And one great thing about that, these people worked all their life, they lived all their life in Westport, and it just, because they can't afford it, and it just became a nice thing to keep them here, and
That's
that's all
right.
that 100%.
that's right.
So
And
we'll-
I've seen that many times at Greenwood.
when do you need the letter?
Unfortunate.
The application is due March 21st. Is it-
We'll have it this week for you. We'll
Okay,
have it,
great.
you know, As soon
And
as
if-
Diane can, square it away, she'll give you a call.
Sure.
So,
And I can send the Word document if that's helpful. Okay,
good luck.
great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was just confused because originally the ferry property was talked about for a few rentals there for carekeepers and whatnot. Remember, ownership, remember?
Yes,
That's what I lost track of. I thought there was gonna be a separate building.
yeah.
Yeah, there was, early on.
Early on,
I
that's what I
did
was still
too.
thinking it was.
No, yeah. You're not alone.
I got you.
No, you're not.
Okay,
Very much.
thank you. Next, Energy Committee, Tony Connors. Looks like Walter is here as well. Please, any of the Energy Committee members that would like to come down, by all means. Mr. Bonds, Dr. Bonds? Hi, Tony, how you doing?
Gentlemen.
Been busy the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
Okay, all set? Okay, we've got a really good opportunity, one of the best we've had in a long time, for substantial savings on the town's electricity. These opportunities, or this opportunity, can't be delayed much at all, or else we'll miss out on, well, there are three opportunities, three choices, and we could lose out on all of them. The Energy Committee met last week and voted on three issues, and they're all laid out here in the paper that I gave to you. Basically, we have three offers. Two of them you've probably heard of, and the other one possibly not. We're looking for a power purchase agreement for a bit over 2 million kilowatt hours. For all of the 2 million kilowatt hours that are not covered by the landfill deal. So between 1.2 and 1.5 million kilowatt hours a year. We've got three vendors in alphabetical order. Blue Wave Capital, which has offered us 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour fixed for 20 years. Borrego Solar Systems, which is 10 cents per kilowatt hour, but it's not fixed. It has a 2% annual escalator. Future Generation Wind, 11.5 cents, and then they escalate by half of the increase in the net metering rate over time. So I've compared all of these using the same assumptions. The numbers I have are not guarantees of any sort of savings. They're just a way for me to put in reasonable numbers there and to have the same set of assumptions for all three of these vendors. And this is what we talked about at the energy meeting. And this is the way we listed them. Borrego, with, based on these assumptions, a 20-year savings of about $1.6 million. Blue Wave, just over $1.5 million. Future Generation Wind, $1.25 million. Again, rough estimates, but the point of them was to use the same set of criteria for everybody. There are a number of other factors which have to be weighed in, mostly during negotiation time. But a couple of the key factors. One is that Borrego, which is an SREC 1 project. You all know that the SREC 1 program ended. This is an SREC 1 project, which is why the funding of it is advantageous. But they need to be online by June 30th, and they are ready to go. So this is why these things can't wait. Even waiting a few weeks on this is going to, someone else is going to snap that one up. I didn't factor in things like one of the concerns of a couple of members of the Energy Committee was they didn't want Chinese solar panels. And what would that cost us? Well, that adds about a half cent per kilowatt hour. Future Generation Wind may have the highest price here, the highest prices, yet they don't have any Chinese components. They're all American and European. So I haven't factored in a number of those things, but I just wanted to get the basic figures out. So what we wanted to do was to present to you these three, all the information you need on these three, and hope that you would either choose the top one and start some sort of negotiations with them, or you could go for all three if you wanted to bring them in and talk to them as quickly as possible. The second thing that we voted on was, oh, by the way, with all these numbers, I'll be happy to sit down with anybody. I know Mike is a maven of the spreadsheet, and I'll sit down with anybody anytime, really, just to go over these. I'll go over the assumptions, go over the calculations, go over the whole thing. Any time anybody wants to talk about that, just let me know, and I'll be happy to do that. The other two things, one is that town meeting approval is needed for you to enter into a 20-year contract. And to wait till May, at least 2, if not 3 of these opportunities will be gone. So that means you could have a special town meeting. There's a number of ways to get around this. The one that the Energy Committee seemed to like best, and I've actually floated this with one of the vendors just to see, would be to actually sign a 3-year contract, which you can sign, with the extension of the contract being contingent on town meeting vote. People financing these things are much more likely to do that than to have the whole thing contingent on town meeting. In fact, if the whole thing is contingent on town meeting, they just won't do it. The finance people just won't do it. But they would do it on a 3, with the high likelihood that it would be extended out to 20. The second thing is that a couple of Energy Committee members at our last month's meeting expressed some concern about whether we do an RFP or not. We had gone from doing an RFP to then deciding that we did not need an RFP for this, because the RFP is not legally required. Town council has said you don't have to do an RFP. We'd like you to do one if you could, but you don't have to. And at the last month's meeting, not this last week's, but last month's, a couple of Energy Committee members expressed some concern about doing that. At this meeting, last week, everyone who was there expressed the feeling that it was in the best interest of the town not to do, not to do
What
one.
Tony's saying is, I was in Maine last week. I didn't
You were in
attend the
Maine
meeting.
last
That was
week,
one of
that's
them
right.
that said we should go out for a
That is
question.
not.
They did that very politely.
I did not schedule the meeting specifically for that
I
reason,
know
as you
that.
know.
I know that.
I know, you're just kidding. But you were the one, and there was one other person who's a town employee in another town who expressed it. Based on current thinking or what the current needs are, all of the members who were there at the meeting at the last time, a quorum, said this is not a time to do an RFP. It's in the town's interest to move quickly. RFP would delay it 6 weeks, and this would kill it.
Let me say, seeing the information and seeing the urgency with Borrego in particular, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, okay. And that's kind of what had happened. It just seemed more sense. Everybody agreed. If you can do an RFP, do one. If other things working against it, you can't. So those are the issues. What we would like as an Energy Committee is to make these recommendations. And one of the things I need to know, and if you could vote on it tonight, it would be really great, is the RFP issue. If we can do this based on what research we've done, going to school on other towns, and these are all reputable companies. I mean, all 3 of them are really good companies that we could count on. But we have, in fact, the opportunity to talk to other towns who have gone with these. Dartmouth, for example, as Walter can attest, has vetted Borrego very thoroughly. But if we could at least do that much, and then at some point soon, make a decision about whether you need to go, what we need to do about the town meeting issue, and whether whether the group would, or the selectmen would agree to do a 3-year contract. And then as quickly as possible, get talking to these people and see what we can do. We don't have a lot of time.
Well, it would seem to make sense that, I mean, I think having a special town meeting in another couple of weeks is not probably going to be in our best interest.
I agree. I
would be one to say, let's look towards a 3-year contract and vote in favor of that. I also think that I think for the same reason, if we went to an RFP process, we would be shooting ourselves in the foot, particularly when you have an SREC 1 project with Borrego, which is very rare indeed. So, my thinking is to, depending upon if there's any deal breakers with Borrego, either going into negotiations with them directly, and then as a second resort, going to the number 2 organization. But I think it would be also very time-consuming for you to try to do sort of bilateral negotiations with 2 vendors at the same time. I think I would prefer saying, go with your top choice, and if some of these conditions that we've put on the table aren't going to work, then proceed to your second choice. But there's a considerable difference between the top 2 and number 3. We're talking almost $250,000.
Yeah, I would agree with Greg, except that I'm not sure I'd want to go to the second or third choice, because the criteria would be a little bit different, and the timeliness of it would be a little bit different. So at that point, you probably could go out to a bidding process
Okay.
if necessary.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I would agree with
Yeah.
everything you said on that.
That's
so.
true, because I think Blue Wave and FGO, that's, well, is FG, that's a wind project.
It's a wind project.
Wind project.
exactly.
And Blue Wave is a SRAC 2 project.
That's right, two projects.
Yeah.
that's right.
So, the urgency would just cover a base
Right,
to
good
do the
point.
bidding. But, I mean, when we're looking at a savings of almost $1.6 million over a 20-year period for the town, I'd like to move as soon as we can on that. So I'd entertain a motion based on Greg's recommendation of entering into negotiations. We're not signing a contract, but we enter into negotiations for a 3-year contract, and also put on a town meeting warrant for 17 years contingent upon approval at town meeting. So town meeting would give us the additional 17 years, and in fact, they'd be approving a 20-year contract at that point with the 3 years that we've entered into.
I'll put that in form of a motion.
Special town meeting within the annual?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be the way to do it, you know. I mean, I don't know how the moderator certainly controls those kinds of things, so if he's got a better way of suggesting it, as long as we get it done the same Saturday, that'd be nice.
Yeah, right.
Notice I said Saturday, folks, we are on
I
Saturday.
did hear that. I
Okay.
did.
Michael, did you?
Oh, Tony, we would have to do the 17-year piece at a town meeting. Does that need to be done right away, or can we use some of those 3 years to sort of warm up to this commitment?
I think that you'd be hard-pressed
Oh, I
to
think
get
you'd have to-
anybody to agree
Yeah, they got
to
funding.
finance it.
It's a funding issue.
circumstances.
I mean, you
Oh,
go to a
just
bank and
curious.
you
Yeah,
say,
no,
we've
I-
got 3 years in
I'm
hand.
just curious.
And it's subject to town meeting, because the town meeting could vote it down.
Yeah.
And then you just have a 3-year contract, so at least we'd be able to take advantage of these prices for a 3-year period.
Exactly.
Give us an opportunity then to go out to bid, but.
So, I think this is a great move, Tony, but can we share some of those assumptions? And I'd like to take a look at
Absolutely.
that spreadsheet if you
Yep.
could, yeah.
I will send that to you.
Yeah.
All the motion on the table would deal with would be kind of entering into
Begin negotiations.
negotiations. So I think any board member should feel very comfortable in participating in that process and looking at what that entails. And I would assume we would be using Copeland Page and Rich Holland to
Rick
do the
Holland.
negotiations.
Yes.
Rick Holland, he's
Yeah.
kind of the master of that statewide,
Yeah.
I think.
In fact, he's been on calls that we've had with,
Yeah, we've talked to him all along here.
And to Borrego.
yeah.
I mean, this is some $60, $70, $80,000 a year savings that you're looking at.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd be concerned about is it's a new entity to us. We go to NSTAR and, what's the other company?
Direct,
National Grid?
National Grid, but Direct Energy,
Direct Energy.
we played with for a while, and
Yeah.
now we're getting out of that.
Well, no, actually, we're not.
Are we?
Our
Okay.
bills will still come from NSTAR, actually, they'll come from NSTAR, because I believe when you guys signed the deal, the extension with Direct Energy, one stipulation was that they will bill through NSTAR, because that's required. So now what's going to happen, we'll still get NSTAR bills, but at the bottom of the NSTAR bill will be a credit expressed in dollars from these discounted net metering credits that we're buying. And so it's still
But
NSTAR.
we're sticking with the Direct Energy.
Yeah, sure,
contract.
there's
Okay,
no
'cause I thought we were
problem
gonna-
with it at all.
Okay.
Direct Energy is just the provider of the energy, and NSTAR now becomes the one who delivers the energy. Their bills get combined in an NSTAR bill, and down at the bottom of that bill, after all the kilowatt hours and the price and all that, is going to be the credits that we have generated that month through this deal, through
Do this
Borrego.
deal, but I thought in the Direct Energy, weren't we talking about getting out of the Direct Energy partnership and going back to NSTAR?
We were, but Direct Energy had a good price,
Okay.
and once we found out, or well, we knew this, but once we got Direct Energy to agree to do their billing through NSTAR, then all of our credits can apply, because they're NSTAR credits, they're not Direct Energy credits.
Excellent.
But Direct Energy now gets subsumed under NSTAR,
Excellent.
which makes it all work.
Dr. Bonds, you've been talking about Borrego for a number of years. They have some local ties here, too.
They have 3 operating installations in Dartmouth, and one is for the town of Dartmouth at the landfill, the old landfill off Chase Road. They're a national firm. They have headquarters on the West Coast, I believe, in Oregon. And their headquarters on the East Coast is in Lowell, if I'm not mistaken. This particular, if we went ahead, I believe the energy would come out of Freetown.
That's correct.
And it's already been permitted and financed. And one thing personally that I like about Borrego is that they're an engineering company. Rather, most of the vendors that have come before us have been finance companies. I just have a good feeling when the engineering company comes on and they're the ones that are actually going to build the project. And if by chance anyone might be interested, maybe I think we could arrange a visitation to the Dartmouth Chase Road site. But I have actually seen one of their installations in Dartmouth, and I thought it was top notch by far.
Tony, you've done a tremendous amount of work on compiling the data on this and reaching out. I know Jack has worked with you and you worked with Rick a little bit, but without your efforts, we wouldn't be at this point now. And we're looking at a potential $1.6 million savings for the town, so.
And I'm only asking 15%?
Oh, exactly. I was going to offer you a cup of coffee.
I'll take it.
I'll up it to a coffee wrap.
I'll take it. Okay, I'll take it.
Any other comments, questions?
Now, Borrego, we're still waiting to get NSTAR, they're still playing games for us, for the landfill.
On the landfill, that's true.
But they know hook up.
Yeah.
Has this company already hooked up to the
Yes,
grid?
they have.
Yeah, they were.
Yep.
They're already into the grid.
All permitted
They're good to go.
into the grid.
We
They've
don't have
got
to
their
worry about
interconnection
that.
agreement. We do not have that problem.
We start
Exactly right.
reducing our bill the next fiscal year.
Exactly. That's the nice thing about it. We would probably produce savings probably a year earlier than in any one of the other scenarios.
No, and I like that. The other part, I mean, if it was, being it just so good, it just the way it came, I would even want to pay more. And then not get the Chinese panels and keep it in US made. This government's putting up the money, but try and get people to work and we're going out. But it's just the way the situation is on this deal here.
Well, the thing is,
That's my-
you could add,
support it,
but you could, during the negotiations with these companies, either of the first two, the third one's win, so it's not an issue, but either of the first two would most likely agree to use non-Chinese panels. They could be, South Korean or whatever, or German. They could be from any place else. It would probably add about, but it's a negotiation issue. You can do that as part of the negotiation. It would probably add a quarter of a cent or a cent. Yeah. But you can do that. The town would pay for it. On the other hand, it affects both of the first two, so it would be commensurate.
And the contract would come back to us.
Yeah.
anyway, So
Exactly.
Rick would be working on it.
Yes, he will, yep.
And, Energy Committee would review it and then make a recommendation to the board, so
Absolutely.
you'd have some opportunities to, weigh in on this. And Michael, you want to look at the details, that would be helpful too to.
Tony
make
does a
another
nice
deal.
job with those things, so I always like to look at them.
Yep.
What's the motion again?
Motion is to sign a 3-year, enter into negotiations with the interest of signing a 3-year contract with an extension to take it out to 20 years, contingent upon town meeting approval for the additional 17 years. So there'd be two things here. We'd enter into negotiations, and secondly, at our next meeting, we'd vote on an article, so you'd have to have that on the warrant, Jack, for the special within the annual town meeting for an extension. Town meeting has to approve the request from the selectmen. We can't go beyond 3 years, so. That's a motion on the floor. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. Good work. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Who's second?
Who seconded the motion? That was a long time ago.
Was it me?
I did.
Oh, Mike.
Michael. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, Keith. Keith Nover, please come on down, Keith. Keith is here. Discussions on a computer system upgrade. Jack, do you want to speak to that, or Keith, you want to take the lead? I know over the last week that we were doing some in-house, trying to upgrade the software that we had installed, or any report on that? Diane, are you aware of that, or anybody?
There was some, I know there was some training that was provided. I don't know, I haven't gotten the
Okay,
status
then
of
let's see if we
it.
get Diane. Question, upgrade on training, where do we stand with it?
We they felt that if we were originally on Libra and just upgraded, we could get it, but we started from day one to Libra. They understand that the big problem is Microsoft ain't touching it, so some of it's been able to fix. Some of the problems are not, they're still outstanding.
Okay, somebody's got to take a lead on this, so we can get at some answers. We had the Westport school system came in to help out for this software package. Now, there's some real questions on this software package, I think, for me personally, but we at least got to know if it's even doable within our system or not at this point. And if not, we need to, look at other options and Microsoft or whatever, but there's a cost associated with it. I thought what we were going to have tonight was at least some clarity on where we stood with that. That was the reason that we had people come in last week to find out. I offered some additional folks from UMass if we needed to bring them in to try to see if we could answer questions on that people were having with I guess, the free software that we're using now.
Yep.
And there are some questions I know internally, anytime you make a change, that's an issue anyways, but when you're doing something that's free, sometimes it's free for a reason.
Well, I mean, I think it's still valid software. I mean, it's certainly, I think it's a good product. I mean, I use it personally.
I'm more concerned with the people that are using the software and where we stand with it right now.
I think if we have appropriate training, it will be certainly more usable. So I would look for, I mean, if there's someone at the university that can certainly provide training or something, I would like to.
All I'd like to get clarity on, and please other people, is, are we comfortable with this software package now? We did training this last week.
We've been very uncomfortable with it, and Diane got a list of all the concerns. I think you have that before
That
you.
was before. Well, after that list, we
Well,
told,
Yeah,
we gave some direction that, let's see if we can get training done immediately over the last week.
Right.
Now, if we haven't had the training, it's a different issue.
well,
We've had the training.
they were
it's-
here on Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
I have not gotten any reports back yet. It's too early. I don't know how the training went. I haven't talked to the department heads. I haven't had time. But there was training on Thursday. I wasn't here. Diane wasn't here. There was training on Friday. I was here. But I was busy with a whole bunch of other stuff. But the fact of the matter is that there are multiple problems that relate to forms having been done all over again. That's a major problem. Inability to merge spreadsheets, databases, and on and on. I mean, you get the list. So it's a real problem. Now, I understand that Microsoft has an Office suite that's free. Is that incompatible?
No, I don't believe it's free. I mean, everything that Microsoft sells has a cost associated with it. I went and got prices on Microsoft Office from a vendor. I mean, to buy the software for everybody is going to be like $40,000, and that doesn't include yearly maintenance. So yearly maintenance is another $20,000. I know the schools are looking at, buying. They have a cost estimate in for licenses. It's probably like $58,000 for licenses. So you're talking $100,000 for just some software. So it's not an insignificant amount of money. I mean, I heard this morning, earlier we're, asking for money. I mean, this is a lot of money that we would use putting towards this particular software. So
Well, when you buy a car, you have to have something to power the car.
Yeah.
You buy a computer and you have software, you have to have something that works with the computers. In my opinion, if we're not going to use Microsoft, that's fine, as long as it works. But if you're switching software and you had Microsoft and you're using something that's more of an Apple base, you're going to have some problems reading material coming in. You're going to have all kinds of training issues up front. And I'm hoping that we give this an appropriate action immediately for the training. We've had folks come in previously to talk about this. We've had people trying to work with the software. It may be that this software works fine. I have some concerns whether it will or not, but having said that, we at least need to give the option, if we have it installed, we need to give the option for it to work or not. I have a short fuse at this point to talk about whether it's working or not in training. How long has it been installed now?
probably about 2 months.
Yeah, I think 2 months should be adequate time to find out where we stand with it and can do the training that's appropriate. Somebody needs to take the lead for the training.
I agree.
And I don't think it should be Keith, quite
No.
frankly. I mean,
Yeah.
Keith is doing the hardware part of it. I don't think, I'm asking you to do that, so I'm not,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, so I would certainly, encourage someone that is a teacher to come in and be able to teach that appropriately.
I tried to get in touch with Bob Nagura.
Yep.
Am I pronouncing that correctly? I always wonder when I
Nagara,
try
but
that
it's-
name. Nagara?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I tried to reach him today, but he didn't answer.
Okay.
And so I will make an effort to
Maybe
see.
over the next couple of days, we can.
Yeah, we can
one
do
way or the
that.
other, know where we
I
stand
mean-
with this.
My thing is, he came in Thursday and Friday. We don't know the result. There was a lot, what you read, those are the issues that brought him here. He came here, maybe solved half of them, maybe solved none of them, I don't know. But I think until we get back something from him saying, yeah, they would need a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or let's just junk it, I think we're just acting prematurely. So if we can wait a few days and see what his results was, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah.
I concur, but I think that, let's not, we worry about the cost of buying software, but there's an incredible cost of lost productivity in redoing work.
Yeah.
And in most offices, Microsoft software is the standard. And people that work from one place to another are most comfortable working with Microsoft Office products. And I own an Apple at home, and, we had to get the Microsoft suite for the Apple so I could figure out how to use my software. And so I think that, I'm not that different than a lot of other folks. And we also work with particularly long-term employees who aren't particularly tech savvy. We haven't put them in an environment where they could be tech savvy, because we've had them saddled with obsolete equipment and old software. And so, part of this is to suddenly, take a right turn and throw in this new package probably didn't make a heck of a lot of sense. It's been there for 2 months. I concur with Mr. Spurlett that we should probably see whether the training that was done last week had any impact at all on employees, but I, for one, would be strongly in favor of going back towards an upgrade in Microsoft so that we can get productivity back online here.
Keith, I think you've done a good job. You've upgraded the equipment, and a lot of positive things happening. But it becomes a negative if people can't use it, if it can't function on a day-to-day basis.
And certainly training is, would be adequate training would have helped the situation, obviously. Also looking at the future, one of the things that we're also looking at doing is switching, mail systems using cloud-based systems. When you start moving into cloud-based systems, the office productivity products aren't as important. If you look last year, more tablets were sold than desktops and laptops. And those tablets didn't have Microsoft on it, Microsoft Office on it. So how are those people getting the work done? They're getting it done because they're using the cloud more. They're working in that direction more. So
Well, I've worked with businesses my whole life, and in my role in 3 different institutions, how they get work done is they use desktops for the most part, and they use, they could use a laptop, but they use a Microsoft base because in the business community, that's what they use. And if you're going to compete in the business community, if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to function because you're not going to be able to access the materials that are sent to you most of the time. So I recognize individually, I recognize the schools, worked in a school environment my whole life too, and Apple's, as Craig said, is, that's the preference within many school districts. But Apple's and Microsoft by design don't talk to one another very well. So my only concern is, I understand everybody was trying to save money for the town.
Yeah.
But I would agree with Selectman Dutra on this. If it's not practical, at some point, we've got to address this as a community and talk about why are we getting this new equipment if we can't take advantage of the software productivity that would come with it.
Okay.
Michael?
Tony, just a question for Diane.
That's not your fault, by the way. I'm sorry. I'm saying this, and I don't want you to take it personally, because it has nothing to do with, it's our side that we need to, as a board, decide how we're going to deal with this.
Well, part of the concern working with a business manager is, there's reoccurring costs, and in day and age of shrinking budgets, the budget didn't increase for us, it decreased. So looking at the long-term ramifications as well, we're trying to be more creative, doing things to be able to support the needs today and tomorrow. So it becomes very challenging. Because I hear that, we can buy it up front, but then there's the long-term maintenance and so forth associated with it that we don't take into consideration. And then we end up, the computers we just got had Office 97 on them. Those are 15-year-old 16-year-old software. We got into that situation for a reason, because we didn't take it seriously all those years, and we let it languish, and we ended up with 15-year-old software. So we were trying to take that into account when we're doing all of this.
We made a major investment in hardware. We're 2 months into their investment. We're not, it was near utilizing this stuff because we had problems with the software. It's a problem.
A quick comment and a question. If we do go back to Microsoft Office, at least we know we didn't leave any money on the table, right, Keith? We made an experiment, we did an experiment, and it didn't work, and thanks for that. Diane, you've had the training,
Some of it,
some of it?
yeah. What I'm hearing preliminarily from the different departments, Libra may be a good system, but it does not mesh well with what we had. We've lost permits. Today alone, I nearly died. I've got over 200 permits I have to start re-entering because they're all messed up. Anything that I backed up, like you suggested, if there's something we want to back it up, I went to put it in today, it goes right down the tubes. It's not just my department, it's building department, accounting's having trouble, they can't merge databases. We're having people on the outside, we're sending stuff to legal counsel, they're sending it back. Please change that over. We can't open up that system. So I have to take what I have, I go to a free online converter, convert the documents, bring it back to me, save it, resend it out, and that's happening with everybody. The guys that came now were really good. They tried everything they could with, they can fix minor things. Some of the questions, they're saying, well, here's the help button. Hit the help button, read the instructions, you'll get through it. But for the most part, I mean, they're looking at like, wow, glad we don't have this system.
Well, again,
So-
if we have to go back, we have to go back, but I'll give Keith credit for making a stab at something that might have saved us some money. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Anything else, Keith?
Well, I didn't know if you had any other questions about any of the other technology, any of the other directions that we're going.
How the phone's going?
Phones are going well. The town hall, Council on Aging, library, highway, police department, all switched over. The high school, I know, switched over. The Macomb School switched over. They're still waiting to do the two other schools. We still have the annex to switch over. So we're waiting for, one, I have to put some new phone lines in the building, the cables, we need to upgrade some of the cables in the building. So I'm waiting for that to go through. And then the vendor will come in and connect up the phone system in there. So there'll be cost savings associated with that, because as we put the PBX in, we can take out some of the more dedicated phone lines and start using the PRI line. So that, every time you get rid of one dedicated line, it's like, $30 a line or something. So it kind of adds up to some money over the.
Are we gonna have a general mailbox that goes by extension, or are they still gonna have their separate lines? You're saying get rid of some lines, that's what.
Well, you can port over phone numbers, so they'll still have their same phone number associated with a particular department, but they'll also have an extension. So, from one office to the next, they can just call that extension, and it'll all be on the extension there.
I just don't wanna see it like the schools, that's all, where the numbers were lost and everything, that's all.
Yeah, like here, we kept, and when we did the town, we kept all the 66
Yeah,
numbers. We
good.
ported them over to the T1, and then they were able to continue to use that. So we had a hunt group for an office, and then individual, extensions within that office.
Great,
Yeah.
yeah, it seems to be, yeah, now.
Anybody else? Anything else? Keith, do you have anything? You all set?
I think everything's going pretty good. I mean, we still have a lot to do. There's a lot on the list, working through the list. I mean, obviously, I'd like to be able to help everyone and do everything at the same time, but, I mean, it's a long list of items on there, so, it just, for me to work my way down a list, it just takes a little time, so. But I am, I have the plan associated with that. I presented a plan, I'm working towards that plan. We're going through the list of things that we need to do for the town. It's just need to get to, each of the items as we go forward. So as I knock one thing off the list, the next one pops up and we start working on that one, so.
I've read some emails, I think we all have over the last few months. I think part of it is in reference to you and Jack and some of the issues that have developed in terms of software issues. I think we need to help both of you folks on that. That shouldn't be something that you folks should be arguing about, or either we can address that as a board, or shame on us for not addressing it one way or the other. But that's something that you folks don't get too uptight with one another about these issues, because we're trying to resolve them, and we need to put a timetable and move forward with it.
No, and
You're doing the hardware, and that's what we've hired you to do. You're doing the support for that. in terms of the software. Once it's installed with some training, hopefully people can pick that up, and if not, then we need to address it.
I mean, it's more than just hardware. I mean, obviously, the servers have software, the software associated with it. So, I mean, it's all the server and installations, it's, you know, the emails, all that stuff. So, I mean, it's just a large undertaking, you know, and everything kind of has to fall into place, and not everything always does fall into place. So you have to work around those, you know, where the things kind of bulge out at the seams there. You have to just work on those.
Are you pretty much on your own on this, Keith?
For the most part, yeah. You know, I do all the design, all the planning. When there's a particular task that I need some extra help in, I will call hire someone to come in and help me with that specific task, work on that task together, get that done, and then I'll move on to the next one, determine what's needed, you know, find out if I need to call someone in for that, we'll call someone in for that, and work on that specific task, and just keep moving forward. So like I say, I just work my way down the list. As I need help, I call in help, get the help, move on to the next task.
Very good.
Jack, do you want to be heard on this at all?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Keith, appreciate you coming, sorry.
All right.
Took a little longer than we planned.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, next to the appointments on the agenda. First is Cecilia Connie for Recreation Commission. Town accountant? No, I think she was here earlier to deal with.
She's all set? Okay.
Yeah, I think she's okay. Jack had put her on.
Yeah, we just moved
But was
her.
kind
All right.
of responding to the questions earlier, so I think we're okay. I think Terry's left, actually. I don't know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So the first one was a request for appointment for Cecilia M. Connie to the Recreation Commission. She's called, she's under the weather this evening, but she told Diane that she certainly would come to the next meeting and meet the board. You know, it's the board's pleasure, but we have some vacancies, obviously, on recreation. I
The
think.
gentleman with the black tie back there.
You might want to get a camera on our
Yeah, wow.
cameraman back here.
Looks like he's working at Pete Pack. There you go.
Tomorrow night.
George, I assume your recommendation is you'd like to see the addition take place as soon as we possibly can.
That's right.
I make a motion that we appoint Cecilia Connie to the Recreation Commission.
Second. You're welcome. All right. And I'd just like to say, she has the second best signature I've ever seen, second to your sister.
Wow.
She has the neatest signature I've ever seen.
That is impressive.
Cursive.
Must have been in your sister's class in school. Very, very
All the
neat.
nuns must have.
I'm speechless, what can I say? Okay, motion on the floor in a second. We'll scratch the signature part of it. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. Next is a request for appointment, Chief, you want to come down? Chief Pelletier, full-time EM,
A month ago and requested permission from the board to advertise for an emergency medical dispatcher. The position was created after a resignation. After reviewing the applications and the position being posted in the town, we came up with a fine full-time resident of the town who was previously a United States member of the United States Air Force. She is a mother of two, lived in town her whole life. She lives on Gifford Road. Her name is Amy Smitty, and I would ask that the board appoint her as a full-time EMD dispatcher. She would have about a month's worth of training to complete.
we have the email from the chief and also the application and resume for the applicant in our
I
package
make a
here.
motion to appoint her on the chief's recommendation.
Second, like the chief said, she is a veteran too, so.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, a town resident and a veteran.
Very impressive background.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Anything else while you're here?
No,
Money,
no, no,
more
I
money.
want to make my appearance tomorrow night at the Finance Committee.
We actually have a question coming up later on the town warrant, I guess it would be next week now.
Okay.
The Attorney General has declared our town meeting vote to be inappropriate for the door-to-door salesman
Oh, I heard that,
deal
yeah.
we're putting in, so.
Get your
I don't know if you've seen that, but we'll send that to you. I don't know what your thoughts or recommendations are going forward and how you want to deal with it, but.
Yeah, I did hear that recently, and because the situation came up, and I'd like to see what the decision was, and maybe it's something that we can just fine-tune. Sometimes there's just one parameter that needs to be tweaked, and then the bylaw may be legal, or if they threw the whole thing out,
Yeah.
then it's...
It kind of looked like they needed a timetable a little bit. I'm trying to find it, and I'll give it to you, you can read it. or Diane, maybe you could just send him a copy? Can't seem to find mine here, but why don't you send the chief a copy tomorrow? But, see if, the thing is, we need if we are going to try to just, wordsmith it or something and send it back, we need to do that next week if you want to try to do it for this year.
Absolutely, I'll give it a look at.
Summer will be coming, and we'll have those issues and those calls again with door-to-door salesmen otherwise.
We do, we get quite a few of those calls, so if it's something we can tweak, I'll most certainly look at that.
If it's only a tweak, does it have to go back to town meeting? Because they voted in essence at town meeting that they wanted that. I mean, I don't think they voted so much on the ands or the or stuff like that long. So I don't know if that's something, does it have to go back to town meeting or is it
Yes,
just a tweak?
it would have to go back.
Yeah, well, at the very least, before we do it, I want to make sure that town council would call the Attorney General's office if we can and try to get some heads up. I don't want to be spending, I think Craig raised an issue in terms of the costs associated with this, going back and forth.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that
Something like
we
this,
got
I
a
think we
recommendation.
know ahead of time.
I think we got a suggestion that it wasn't gonna pass in that form when it was presented that way.
Okay.
Just briefly looking at it, looks like the problem was that there wasn't standards and criteria for the board to be guided by. So maybe we can come up with a little bit of stricter standards and maybe it'll pass muster or something.
I mean, I'm just speaking as one board member here, but other people weigh in. I mean, I take your lead on this, public safety issues, and, you deal with it now, and this is trying to help out individual homes that, I don't want to have people running out with shotguns, keeping people off their property, but it's almost coming to that in some areas now.
Yeah, it
We're
looks,
gonna have to have it back on before March 10th, so we send it back to.
yeah, it looks like an easy fix. It just says, it has two things. It says a lack of a definite time limit, and two, it was missing standards and criteria for the board to make the decision, so.
Yep. Maybe town council will give us a freebie on that based on the fact that that's what we're paying town council to do.
Yeah, they approved it already, so that looks like an easy fix.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Where it goes, the curb signs you reviewed, right? It's got the attachments to it,
Yes.
but you did review them, right? Because we didn't get an official letter, but it says you submitted the report, so.
You want to bring that up right now, Steve?
So I spoke with Jim Hartnett about that. He requested copies of accident reports that were on curves. So I did as an internal records check, and these are all the accidents we came up with. I believe that he was looking to get grant money so that we could provide signage at no cost to the town. So I absolutely agree and support his efforts.
All right, just making sure it's, is that something you need to vote on tonight?
No, just let me, I don't see it on
I
the agenda.
didn't see it on the agenda,
Yeah.
but I don't know that we'd have a lot of big public.
Information item, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just informational. I mean, I would like to, they're
town's
asking
gotta
us to
sign
sign a letter, and I said, well, let's bring it before the board so you can see it. But, it might be, if we're all on the same page, fine, but just, want to make sure everybody was.
Yeah, I'll motion to send the letter then.
Okay.
Second.
Any other comments on that? Are you know what we're talking about here, Michael?
Mass
Yes,
DOT,
I saw,
all
I
curves.
read, I saw all the
Yep.
suggestions and the accident reports.
And the lead was really the planning board on this with public safety.
It was. I think Jim's doing a great job at that.
Okay,
Planning board.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous, good. Thank you again, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next, action items. Finalization and makeup of a highway surveyor search committee. Dick, do you want to, you had that one on?
Right.
You were the,
What it is, moving forward with that is, gonna put the committee together. This gives you and myself as a Board of Selectmen representative. It's gonna be from the Concom, Paul Jonkis. From the planning board, it's gonna be Jim Harnett, Steve Lum, the business manager, and Russell Hart, a former selectman, as well
Highway surveyor.
as a highway surveyor. And the reason I chose those individuals is Concom does a lot of work with the highway surveyor, whether it's stormwater runoffs, not, so there's a lot of interaction. Jim Harnett, all these subdivision, every day he's dealing with the highway surveyor, so it's important to have that there. Russ Hart, who's also been a lot of institutional knowledge, so he would be good for that. And Steve Lombard, basically almost like the immediate supervisor for that. And so that's what that group is gonna be consistent, gonna be 5. And again, what we're gonna do, we're gonna review not the bylaw, but the job description that we have. And again, that group, then we're gonna put it out. It's strictly gonna be a recommendation. We're gonna probably end up saying, 2, 3 people will present the top 2 or 3 people to the Board of Selectmen. and the Board of Selectmen will be voting on these individuals.
Dick,
So-
can you review for me? This is different than what we had two
Yeah,
former
one
highway.
died.
So let's do it again. We got the planner.
Okay, we have the town, we have Jim Hannett, the town planner, and then we have Paul Jonkis, Conservation
Concom.
Commission, Concom. We have Russell Hart, Farm Selectman, as well as a highway surveyor for many years, and Steve Lombard, who's the business agent as well as the overseer at this time for the.
And you want to do
highway.
5?
5.
Because we had a couple other offers from folks that wanted to participate in that.
I just want to get cumbersome. 5 would be enough to,
Well,
again, it's only a recommendation,
All you're doing, we voted on this back in November, all you're doing is substituting one of the highway surveyors by
That's right.
having the immediate supervisor, right?
That's right. And then and what we're doing is, and that's all gonna come back to the board, and the guys, and then after that, this board can review the top 3, top 2, whatever it is.
So we're gonna insert tree watering into the job description?
Well, I guess, well,
I guess it's already there.
It's
already there, right?
You know, I see the highway surveyor job description as the next thing, and
Yeah.
you know, would remind the board that we talked at town meeting and said that we were gonna go with the present job description, so, I'm a little uncomfortable, you know, I mean, hopefully, we're still supporting the present job description, because otherwise, in good faith, I mean, that's what we told town meeting last year.
We put it on here, so tell me what you want.
Well, I
Well, I
actually,
think
I was
once
in
this-
Maine last week, but I
But once
think
this,
we,
no,
Still
I
responsible.
put it on.
Check the email.
So what it is the, we'll put this in, and I wanna get this board together, and let's sit down, let's talk, here's the job description. I think we can tweak something for this and that, so.
yeah, you gotta review the search committee will review the applications and match them up to the job description. And, you know, the board is gonna make the final say, you know, in terms of the position, so. Okay. Next is discussion regarding population.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm good.
The job description does have a sentence under supervision, the first sentence, that probably should be deleted, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, we did say that at town meeting, by the way. You know, what we would do is take the reference out of an elected official.
Yeah.
So, serves as an elected official.
Is there any other-
Acting accountable, you know.
Any other change that anybody wanted to suggest? That it's just in terms of content? For example, under job environment, first paragraph, where it says required to work during the evening at least 4 nights per month when attending board meetings, that could possibly be changed to may be required to work
Yeah.
at least 2 nights per month?
Or as needed, sometimes, you know, it
Yeah.
can be 4 times this month and nothing the next month. And again, I think that's something, once we get this committee together, we kinda go over some of the things, and then we review it back. And if we get this thing up and ready to go out and advertise by, the middle of the end of March.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be some common sense approach with it, but in good faith, I don't want to start messing around with too much of the job. We may decide we want to change the job description a year from now. but,
I'm
you
just
know,
trying to get
I
it
agree.
in
We made a
line,
commitment.
You know,
We made a commitment. I think we should stick to it.
but those 2 suggestions, Jack, I think are valid.
may be required,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that enough?
Yeah, I mean, you use your judgment on that, but let's keep, I mean, supervisors, 13 full-time employees, that means we're gonna have to
Yeah.
go out and hire people, you know, and
Yeah.
30 seasonal employees, we're gonna have to hire a lot, but we realize that's, you know, that's basically what the job description says, it's not what we're doing now, and, you know, maybe down the road someday we'll be doing
Yeah.
that, but.
Okay.
But, you know, beyond that, I think there was a sense that, you know, we're gonna try to work within that present job description, at least initially, and then we'll see how.
Well, there may be something, that's my review, that might have come down since this job description was written to the state that they have another criteria. And so I don't want to be in violation of any state or federal law, so
Yep.
we'll put that in there.
I just don't want you to come back and say that you need a master's degree,
Yeah.
a doctorate's degree, or something like that, and, you know,
Yeah.
that changes it substantially. Okay, next is the discussion regarding population chart for master plan. And you want to take ownership on that one? Okay, I'll.
Yeah, go
Jackie,
ahead.
you want? Go ahead.
No, just that there was a recent newspaper article that, this past month, that had some very different population predictions for the future. One was from Serped, suggesting that by 2030, Westport could have 4,082 more people living here. And the other from Donahue Associates, their estimate was that it might increase in that from 2010 census to the 2030 census by 865. It's a big difference in terms of what their projections are. Just thought,
I saw the whole article, and they actually went back for what previously had been projected, and some, Elaine's here on the planning board, there were some projections made in previous Serpent reports, and the master plan was built on projections and so forth, so it's just kind of data and stuff. And, you know, everybody's got a crystal ball trying to figure out what we're gonna be 10 years from now or 30 years from now, but, you know, that's just by way of information. Some of the real drastic ones are Marion and Mattapoisett, where the Donahue Institute projects a decline in enrollment in Marion and Mattapoisett, looks like, and the Serpent projects an increase. So there are some, if you look at some of the cities and some of the surrounding towns, there's certainly some differences of opinion. Some of that might be based on the rail, some of it may be based on other factors, but whatever, people took that into account, and the Standard Times did an article on this probably about a month ago now.
Yeah, I think
Very detailed.
I missed it, and Jim did as well, so I'm here
I'll
to
get you
find
a
out
copy.
what that was. So
Yeah, I'll
send it
get
to
you
us?
a copy.
Thank
It's very detailed, yeah. This is just one page of it, but as Jack's saying, it kind of, you know, if we're making some assumptions as a town, you know, in terms of our population, these are at least, we've got two groups that are pretty solid on this, and one suggesting that over the next 20 years, we might increase by around 5.6%, and the other suggesting about 26.3%. So there are some factors that would change a little drastically if those, if we went with one or the other, or, you know, average the two together or whatever, but just by way of information.
But I think also that you'd want to get a recommendation from the master planning committee, because they're going to be making assumptions about how do we manage growth.
Exactly.
And I think this is the Donahue versus the Serpent reports are based upon different versions of how growth will be managed. And I think the one that we all have to sort of keep an eye towards is South Coast Rail. I mean, you look at the impact that had on the town of Lakeville, and how that sort of ballooned the population infrastructure there in a 10-year period. So, but I think rather than having us act on this, I would really like to hear some input from the Long-Range Planning Committee.
Well, I'd also ask that if we look at the master plan that's in place now, based on the population that we used last time, based on what you just said there, you'll get some interesting facts in terms of where we should be now based on the last master plan. I would suggest that it would be way beyond the 15,000 population that Westport has now. So we made some decisions some years ago based on a master plan that projected enrollments, not enrollments, but the population to be a little different than what it is now. And it's, again, you're looking through a crystal ball. I'm not trying to pick on a particular group, but we make major decisions in terms of construction and you know, staffing, and we need to be conscious of that as a board. Okay, next, update on the land trust letter. I thought I saw an email today. I think there was a mix-up with a letter getting out, Diane, or something, or a post office box, or?
Yeah, it was mailed out, and I don't know why it was returned, so
Yeah.
let him know.
Yeah.
And what I did was I scanned it in, got it to Ryan Mann, he did get it.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, he is working to make sure everything is in compliance.
Yeah, Ryan, unless you want to speak on it, I think we just pass on it, because you probably just, if you've seen it, you've just seen it in the last day or so. So, yeah, okay. Next is the approval of a release of a lien. A book and page number listed. It's in our packets. Anybody have a question on the release of the lien?
Unless it's a necessity, I'm going to abstain from this. It's my wife's grandmother that passed away a few months ago, so.
Okay.
Move that we release the lien.
Second.
Any questions on that? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and one abstention.
I need to get that. Thank you.
Okay. Next, approval of regular minutes for January 27th and February 10th.
I have no issues with either unless you folks do. I'll
So you're making a
move that we
motion?
would pass them as written.
Okay, and we have a
Approve them as
second?
written.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. Question and answer period. Okay.
We didn't do February 10th minutes.
I thought we'd do both.
Oh, we did both? Okay,
Together, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I want
Never
to take
mind.
advantage of the fact that Michael had no
Okay.
comments on either one, so. Okay, next, town administrator's report.
I think I've covered the items in my report, earlier items.
Thank you, Jack.
Always loves his, yeah.
We're going remarkably fast. It's not, there's no Monday Night Football, no Olympics on. I don't know what's going on.
Michael's at a 5:30
Got no
flight.
incentives and we're doing it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there was a memo last minute putting the boxes, I don't know if it was.
We had a meeting, what's the memo?
Meeting with the moderator, Steve Forrest.
Excuse me?
It's the one with Steve Forrest.
Yes, the moderator would like us to settle, we could do this at the next meeting, but the moderator would like us to settle on a Saturday date. He's suggesting either May 3rd or 10th for the annual town meeting, and requests that we do that as soon as possible, which would then allow service clubs, sports organizations, and other who may wish to raise some money by selling everyone a breakfast or a lunch, provide health care or games and so forth for children during the day, so I think it's a good recommendation. And the other thing he had in this memo was that Article 3, to fund the stipends for elected boards to be fully funded because town meeting can lower the number but can't raise the number. So, his suggestion was that when we're looking at this at the next meeting, you might want to put the higher figure in there at this point and then make adjustments if need be later on. Okay, any questions on that?
Well,
I said that would be my suggestion at the meeting, yes.
You wanted to pick a date?
Yes.
I
mean, you can
thought
do that
we
tonight.
had I thought we had a date based on our deadline.
It says May 6th on the warrant, but that's a Tuesday. I'd suggest earlier, because they're already gonna they have to cancel kids' sports because of this.
Oh, okay, that's what you're getting at.
Cancel baseball.
Yeah, as long as it's not opening Saturday, that's all.
I don't know if we're gonna be invited this year, if we're not gonna be able to play on a Saturday. Either one. May 3rd, I would guess, earlier in the season.
Is it, does the May 3rd date back up our deadline to a point where it's a problem?
It's 3 days. I don't think it's, I think we'll
Doesn't
be
mess
okay.
us up.
Okay.
Want May 10th.
So, yeah, I'm okay either
We're
one.
gonna run into all sorts of stuff. You'll have baseball, soccer.
I'm just
First
thinking the
communion.
cooler it is, the better, we'll have better attendance.
Alright.
The further you go, it's gonna get
May
warmer.
3rd.
Yep.
Okay.
Jack, you want to look into that just to make sure if there's a preference for the schools, with one of those dates, and then we can come back and finalize that at the next meeting?
Okay.
That might be the way to do this, just to, I hate to put a date and find out the schools have.
Good idea.
It's kind of their building, so, okay. Next is correspondence requiring action. Had a letter received from the Division of Marine Fisheries regarding the finding and funding of projects that enhance saltwater fishing opportunities through the improvement of public access. Anybody have a chance to look at the correspondence? What's the action required on it?
Just a request if you want to chase some money, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, though, Richie's out of town, maybe, Gary or somebody could give input? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what he needs for lights down there.
Closing date is March 28th, Jack. Now, we're scheduled, our regular scheduled meeting's on the 10th, so maybe, Jack, between now and then, we could talk to some folks. Grant limit is $10,000. So we'll
Lights
have a
on
little bit
Fishing
of time.
Pier, parking.
I mean, next week, I'm
fishing, et
assuming
cetera.
we're just going to deal with the warrant issues, right? Town
Do we
meeting?
still have a meeting this Thursday with schools?
No.
Oh, that was canceled?
No,
Okay.
because the schools submitted their figure
Okay.
to us.
Okay. Dr. Gary, anyway? Anyone else? You think?
Well, maybe email it to Richie. He may be able to get it.
I don't know if Richie's
Okay.
reading his
Oh,
emails
Richie.
from Florida,
Yeah, on the beach, yeah.
but those would be the folks, I would think.
Those would be the main ones, I would think.
Okay.
Maybe recreation too, and beaches, because it is parking at boat launches and for fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it can cover Beach Ave for some kind of help we need down there.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Second, a notice was received from the Office of the Attorney General. Oh, we talked about that with the special town meeting. So we've done that one. The third one is a notice was received by Terry Sullivan regarding the Copicut Reservoir, lowering the water level, informational only. Basically, they're trying to cut down the water level from the, so we don't run into more flooding issues.
Can we put this on the scroll, and Jack, if you do any releases, can you put this on it? Because I get a lot of questions from people around the pond because of mosquitoes and everything. Could you
Yeah.
let them know that it's gonna be lowered the other
Okay.
side?
It is on the website.
You got it on the school already? Okay, on the
Well,
website.
Tupper side seems to be doing pretty good, South of Tupper, right?
I think so.
I mean, we haven't had any,
But we've got some on the north side too.
no, yeah. But I thought with this last
Adirondack
rainstorm, I don't know if anybody, had got any calls. I didn't.
No, he had it low, I
Yep,
think.
yep. Okay, board member suggestions for items of future agenda discussion, action?
I think we're keeping pretty busy right
Hearing,
now.
hearing none? Okay, other business coming before the board this evening? Michael?
Oh, I guess under the last thing we do where we get to speak
Well,
on
you
something.
be first, Michael, and we can do it under other business.
Okay, well, I learned a long time ago that when you make a mistake, admit it quickly and emphatically. So what I learned this week was that the causeway that we've been working to study so much has a name. And I know some of you all know that it has a name, but I didn't know it had a name.
Be careful, though.
Be careful. Well, it's named after, it's named after Thomas Edward Petty, who died there in 1931 as a Westport Highway Department worker. He died on Christmas Eve. He was 54 years old, and it wasn't until 2000, that we recognized him and actually commemorated and put up two signs. Now, the signs haven't lasted. I'm not sure whether it's the weather or the weathering or vandalism, whatever, but the signs haven't lasted, but the causeway has a name. And it's actually, and this was brought to my attention by Mr. Petty's grandson, who is Thomas Petty Hancock. We all know.
Yep.
Now, did he die during the construction of it? Was he working?
No,
on it?
he was on a crew of two guys repairing the causeway on Christmas Eve, if you can imagine. Yeah. So I was, it's interesting because we're working to study it, and I was reminded that it does have a name.
Very good. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Nothing can beat that.
Just my usually snow spiel, that there's still some 4-foot heaves on the sidewalk. And just so you guys know, that in our packet is about a hazmat site at a house on County Street. This is 4 houses up from me, and none of us got notice of this. And keep in mind, we all got wells in that neighborhood. So just so you know, sometimes the board gets something that the neighborhood doesn't even get. The house is torn down now, and Frank Corp's there digging it up. But we all have wells in the neighborhood, and to my knowledge, nobody got a notice about that.
That was in that package?
It's in mine, yeah.
How should that normally be handled, Steve?
You would think they'd have to notify abutters. I'm 4 houses down.
No, not as part of this.
And we've-
About your delivery package.
His delivery package? He gets a different one than we do?
Oh, talking about this hazmat.
Yeah, that would have been in everybody's box.
You said everybody.
Oh, it's in the box?
In the box, right.
Oh,
That's
so
it.
somebody
It's
might
not
have picked it
part
up
of your
earlier?
packet. It was in your box.
Okay.
So, just a little heads up that the neighborhood didn't even know that. My original well, it was only 20 feet, it was a hand-dug well. I added a second one. But you got a hazmat site 4 houses up and you didn't even know about it. There's some wells there that are 25 feet deep, so I don't know what'll happen with it, but it's just a shame nobody gets notice. That's it for now.
There isn't a requirement statewide for this kind of thing?
All I can tell you is
Board of Health?
without exaggeration, I'm probably 200 feet from the site. And again, it's
Was it a
wells.
gas station, or was some other?
No, a house, they must have had an underground tank. All I know is we saw the Frank Corp go there and the house was ripped out in a couple of days, about a week ago. Residential house up the street.
Well, now you know why.
Yeah, I didn't know why, but obviously you knew something was up with Frank Corp there with big machine.
We could ask Board of Health what would be the normal procedure. Maybe there's something we could tweak there.
But I've had the same complaints with septics going into the wells in that neighborhood too, so, just so you know.
Diane, maybe we could check with the Board of Health and see what the procedure is on that, because I would agree with Steve. I think that abutters should be made aware of these kinds of things from a health standpoint.
Yeah, if you see the CC, it's just to the homeowner and then us and associations.
Yep. I don't know if the Board of Health's even seen that, and they should.
I don't know, they're not on the list.
Okay, we had, since our last meeting, we lost Donald Bernier, who was on the master plan. He was the chair of the master plan some years ago. Donald Bernier? Oh, not Donald Bernier.
I was gonna say, he's already
What's, Bernier or real estate? What's his first?
Brenner.
George Brenner. George Brenner. I guess, the last 10 days? Yeah, he was one of the original folks and chair of the master plan some years ago.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was also a veteran, and served, I think, both in Korea and Vietnam, so.
He married a friend of mine, one of his wives.
Okay,
He's
yeah,
a good friend,
yeah.
he's a good guy. He bought
So-
a house from him.
So I don't know, you know, in terms of involvement with the town recently, but I know some years ago he was certainly involved in that. Steve's just given me the Westport Town Farm Community Input Session, Tuesday, February 25th, which is tomorrow, from 5:30 to 7:30 at 830 Drift Road at the Town Farm.
No, excuse me, they've changed the location, it's at the Macumber House.
I think you were here then.
What? Yeah.
I think you were here. So it's a Macumber House.
Make it a-
Same time and date, just gonna be at the Macumber House tomorrow, so. Sure, by all means, yeah.
I just wanted to announce that there will be a candidates night on Wednesday, March 19th at the high school. And there are only 4 contested races. And other people will have a moment just to introduce themselves. But we are going to be looking for people to speak for and against each of the ballot questions. So I would like maybe you to think if there's some that you have proposed or would like to speak for, be in touch with me, and
Okay.
What time? Very
March
helpful.
19th?
March 19th, and we're just trying to plot out the time, our committee, now, whether 6:30 or 7.
Okay.
And we may need 2.5 hours to get, all the ballots.
When is it,
At
whereabouts?
the high school,
At the high school.
Wednesday, March 19th.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay? Thank you. Good
All
night.
right, I entertain a motion to go into executive session. And you want to read the pursuant to?
Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining and a pending legal matter related to FLSA and the approval of executive session minutes of January 27th, 2014, and February 10th, 2014. I, Richard Spurlock.
Second, Steve Willett.
Okay, roll call vote.
I, Richard Spurlock.
Aye, Steve Willett.
Hi, Craig Dutra.
I'm Mike Sullivan.
Hi, Anton Viera. We'll come out into open session and then adjourn. So thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you.